I would, before calling to order the regular meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners this Monday, December 13th, 2021, I'd like to begin with a truth in taxation meeting, as has been our habit, our custom in the past. So again, I'd like to apologize that we're starting here a couple minutes late at 7:33. But again, before the meeting begins, I'd like to call to order the public hearing for the 2021 proposed tax levy. I believe that we are not technically required to do this because the proposed levy is less than 5%, but it has been our custom to do it in the past, and we will continue that custom here this evening. So the Park Board will now hold a public hearing on the 2021 proposed tax levy for the Wilmette Park District. I will first call on Executive Director Steve Wilson to explain the reasons for the levy and any proposed increases or decreases. But before I do, I'm going to just highlight a couple of the
well, that's what I was going to do. So go for it.
So I'm going to beat you to the punch. So for general corporate purposes, we have $2,913,440,000. For recreation purposes, we have $336,141. For Social Security tax purposes, we have $750,000. For Illinois municipal retirement purposes, we have $700,000. For security purposes, $40,000. For liability insurance purposes, $368,000. And for auditing purposes, $24,500. These make up an aggregate levy, which is capped at the lower of 5%, or the consumer price index from the prior year, which last year was 1.4%. This year, it will be substantially higher than that, so we will have a different type of meeting probably this time next year. But the 2021 total levy will be $5,132,081. So with that, does anyone wish to address us on the 2022 proposed tax levy? Steve?
Yeah, actually, I just want to add, that was the tax cap funds. There's also the non-tax cap funds for special recreation,
right,
as well as the debt service. So the overall aggregate tax levy for 2021 is $6,586,520, which is actually a decrease of $1.3 million, or a 16% decrease.
So it's a substantial decrease from last year, 16%.
Correct.
Great.
That's,
I think that's
driven
worth
by
highlighting.
the debt component of the levy.
Absolutely. All right. Hearing no one else who wishes to address us, I will now close the public hearing on the 2022 proposed tax levy. Thank you. And with that, we will shift gears now to the regular meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners. And could I begin with a roll call?
Commissioner Duffy.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Frazier.
Here.
Commissioner Kozlowskis.
Here.
Commissioner Clark.
Here.
Commissioner Goebel.
Here.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Here.
You have a full quorum.
Great. As we start the meeting, I will again highlight that, as has been our custom over the last year or so, we will allow public comment after we've heard the GILLSON Plan Comprehensive Plan update, because I see there are a few folks in the audience who may wish to address us on that. So the agenda will be a little bit different from its historical structure, but common to what we've done in the recent past. Could we move on to the consent agenda, and could I hear a motion on that?
Yes, I move to approve the consent agenda of December 13th, 2021 regular board meeting, a copy of which is to be attached to and become a permanent part of the minutes of this meeting.
Second?
I second.
Great. Does anyone wish to remove any item on the consent agenda?
No.
Great. Hearing none. Roll call?
Commissioner Duffy.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier.
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel.
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Yes.
Consent agenda is approved.
Great. Next up on our agenda, item 4.0, the GILLSON Comprehensive Plan Update, the consultant presentation. Who wants to lead us off? I will. Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Andy.
You're welcome. And before Andy gets going, there is some background noise. I don't know where it's coming from. I apologize for that, but hopefully they can work it out in the back room here. So everyone's looking at me as it's going on. That's why I'm mentioning it. Back to you, Andy.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. When we were here last month, in November, we presented 5 master plan concepts, a series of a la carte alternates that could be added or subtracted from the overall master plan. There was a great conversation afterwards. And what we heard you ask us to do was to evaluate some pricing or provide some pricing on some of the roadway investigations that the master plan concepts were pursuing. So I'd like to just very quickly run through the 5 concepts that we presented previously and just refresh your memory. I'm happy to stop and to go into any more detail on them. If you would like, please stop me if I'm being unclear or not covering something that's critical. But I don't want to waste any time in the elaboration on concepts that everyone has already heard. So, just very quickly to run through these 5. In the first concept, concept number 1, the plan is to leave Gilson Park in its historic configuration with all the roadways intact. The key change to the park would be the addition of a sidewalk and a bike lane along Harbor Drive on the south side of the park.
I hear it.
How am I the one who's the least distracted by this noise?
It's like a cartoon.
In the second concept, we proposed a concept that would remove Middle Drive from the park. It's the least used drive in the park, and the removal of, as a roadway, and the removal of that drive was the key feature of concept number 2. Be mindful that with each of these, we were trying to be very considerate about the amount of impervious pavement in the park. With the addition of the sidewalk in concept 1, but with leaving the roadways intact, we added a small amount of impervious pavement to the park. With the reduction or removal of Middle Drive, we lose some impervious pavement in the park, bringing the total down to 9.3 acres from the current 9.5 acres. There was a conversation about parking. There is the potential for parking on Middle Drive, and to reclaim some of that parking, concept number 2 provided some additional parking along some of the other existing drives. In concept number 2, the other thing that was done was that Upper Drive was actually moved outside of the MWRD property and fully onto Park District property. I forgot to mention. Okay, in concept number 3, we looked at removing both Middle Drive and Upper Drive. This represents the most significant reduction in impervious pavement. It represents a significant reduction in parking and potential parking in the park. As you can see, 31 total spaces. Otherwise, all the other features are generally the same as they relate to the roadways. And again, I'm focusing primarily on the roadways because that's what the bulk of our presentation is today, some of the costing that we've done on those roadways based on your direction from last month. Concept number 4 removes Middle Drive, but also removes the Washington Street exit drive, making the circulation flow a kind of one-way loop around the park from a revised new entry into the park, which is pulled slightly further north along Michigan Avenue off Sheridan Avenue. That new entry, a two-way entry, that no longer becomes an a la carte option in option 4. It's essential in order to get two-way traffic in this option 4. And to reclaim some of the lost potential parking in the park, we add some additional parking as well.
But to clarify, that's an a la carte option on the other plans.
It is an a la carte option on the other plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And then concept number 5. Concept number 5 explored the removal of just Upper Drive, leaving Middle Drive in place, because from our outreach to the community, we learned that Middle Drive is used as a walkway by many of the users of the park, which is good information because, as you'll see, and as you asked us to do, we've provided some pricing for Middle Drive becoming a sidewalk, a large kind of walk path, as opposed to a vehicular path. Okay. So, like I said, we had a great conversation a month ago, and lots of discussion about not only the concepts, but about some of the a la carte options. But what we were left with was the task of coming back to you and providing some rough order of magnitude costs for the various possibilities of the roadway work that we were proposing, that is along Middle Drive and Upper Drive. So, just simply, and to keep these things clear, there are pricing options that we've provided, and we have gone through and broken down all the pricing. It's provided to you in a very simple way here today, but we have backup for all of this data. We're looking at costs as they relate to Middle Drive and Upper Drive. We'll start with Middle Drive. The costs that we're talking about on Middle Drive, very simply, are to repair Middle Drive. Leave Middle Drive and just repair it as it is. Repair the roadway and repair the infrastructure, the stormwater management below it. Remove Middle Drive, that is to say, remove the pavement, remove the curb, remove the infrastructure below it, and return it to parkland. And then the third option is to remove Middle Drive as a vehicular roadway, remove some of that stormwater management underneath it, the stormwater infrastructure underneath it, and turn it into just a large 12-foot wide concrete pedestrian walkway. Okay. So you can see dashed in purple here on your slides, Middle Drive shown in this first option. This is to repair Middle Drive. This is like concept number one, leave Middle Drive in place, repair Middle Drive, repair the infrastructure below Middle Drive, and the rough order magnitude cost for that work is roughly $900,000. And in these costs, it's not just construction costs. We've also provided soft costs for engineering fees and additional soft costs for contingencies. We didn't feel like we needed to get into all the breakdown, but we've provided, as you can see, overall linear footage of pavement that's being, or work that's being done, and a kind of per linear foot cost. But it's, again, it's all broken down into kind of cubic feet of replacement.
And just to be clear for the public as well, for all of us, just to reiterate, each cost is specifically referencing the area circled in red.
That's correct.
So this is for this roadway as indicated, even though this is the concept that might have a sidewalk along Harbor Drive, none of those costs. We're just speaking of the roads.
That's right. Yeah, this is not the overall cost of, completing all the work proposed. This is specifically just to the Middle Drive work that's been proposed and the Upper Drive work that's been proposed to help you evaluate which of these overall concepts or options to proceed with. Okay, the second one then is to remove Middle Drive. So this exists in several of the concepts, the proposal to remove Middle Drive and return it to parkland. The benefit here is that we get more parkland, we get less impervious surface in the park. Obviously, the downside is that we've heard that the public and constituents use that as a walking path, and we just return it to parkland. This is obviously much less, $680,000. The cost is much less because the cost is still substantial because we have to remove all of that roadway and all of the stormwater infrastructure below it, and then re-landscape it as parkland. So there's more work to remove, and there's more landscaping to replace. But in the long run, there's less overall maintenance. Many years down the road, there's less maintenance because there's less infrastructure and less pavement. Each cost is proposed the same way with a rough hard cost and then soft costs of 30%, which account for engineering and contingencies. Okay, and then lastly, for roughly $800,000, we can turn this into this large sidewalk. And again, the cost here is to remove the road, to remove the infrastructure. Those repair costs and maintenance costs go away in perpetuity, and it just leaves it as the sidewalk that we understand it to mostly be used for. Not entirely to be used for, but mostly to be used for in current.
So quick question for
Yep.
you. So in this plan, you propose a concrete walkway, and is that just for function? Because there may be vehicles riding on it, like Park District staff, vehicles, police vehicles, or emergency vehicles, and like that. So you wouldn't want to propose some sort of a gravel path or something like that?
That's right, yeah. For accessibility, for long-term maintenance, longevity, access through the park, it's being proposed as concrete.
And the 12-foot width, because I think we had a similar conversation with the community playfields, and I think we were talking about much narrower widths. So could you talk a little bit about the 12-foot width?
Well, the 12-foot width allows allows for vehicular passage of it. Probably gets built with a more substantial base so that it could have vehicles on it without worrying about it being damaged over time by those vehicles driving on it. But I think we also heard that pedestrians are using it, and so a normal sidewalk would be 5 feet wide. This is double the normal sidewalk, so it becomes a much nicer path for pedestrians in a parkland.
And do you recall how wide the main pedestrian path is off of Michigan to the beach house? Is that 12 feet? Is that 10 feet? I don't recall.
I think it's less than 12 feet, but it's quite wide. It must be at least 10 feet.
Okay. So if we went with one of these options down the road, we might tweak it a little bit. We might
Absolutely.
save a little bit.
For sure.
But conceptually, we're talking about a concrete path.
That's correct.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Can I
So
ask
then-
a question?
Yep.
And I'm just going to expose my ignorance here because this will apply to all of them. But I understand there's the cost. You mentioned removing everything underneath. What happens if we just left what was underneath and took the
Abandoned in
surface the road? And if we were going to not make it vehicular, right? In option B and C of those three choices.
I suppose there's some amount of demolition that would not need to be done, but the roadway is 20 feet wide. The sidewalk would be narrower. There's existing curbs, so there's some grade changes that would need to be adjusted. So there is still a considerable amount of demolition along that length that needs to get done. Not a proper base for the sidewalk that we would propose. It needs to be significantly renovated as it is, so you wouldn't just pave over it, because within just a couple years' time, you would see all that wear again. If we're going to go to the extent to renovate it, either as a road or as a sidewalk, we really should remove it, make sure it has a proper base so that it has another good 100 years, so to speak.
But the 100,000 for the infrastructure stormwater that's down below the ground, that has to be dug up, or could we fill it with dirt or whatever to keep it solid? And that's the cost I was asking about.
Abandon it in place.
You can abandon the line, but you can't abandon the manholes and the service lines. You also have to put in perforated pipe to drain areas that are gonna naturally receive water anyhow, so that's all calculated.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Okay. Moving to Upper Drive. 4 options. It's actually part of these microphones, right? There's something about these microphones.
I think it's Steve's new puppy that's under here.
I brought them with me.
Okay, 4 here. So in the last one, there was repair, there was replace, and there was sidewalk. Remember, with Upper Drive, there's also the potential to move it entirely onto Park District land and off the MWRD land, hence the 4th option here. So the first option, repair it, leave it in place, leave the park as it is. Concept B, remove it entirely. You see that in a couple of the options. Option C is to move it, so repair the parts that are currently on Park District land, move the parts that are on MWRD land onto Park District land. And then D is to remove it and turn it into a sidewalk, just as we proposed with Middle Drive. So just another option there. Okay, so let's go through those. All right, so again, only the area in pink, this is Upper Drive, are being contemplated with these costs. The first option is to repair the existing Upper Drive, slightly bigger, so the totals slightly more pavement, so the totals are higher. Again, you can see the demolition, the reconstruction, the infrastructure costs, the stormwater infrastructure costs, and the landscaping associated. So that's a total of $980,000, almost $1 million. In the second one, this is to remove. So the removal will always be less. There's considerable demo. You have to remove all the infrastructure, but we're just putting back landscaping instead of putting back all the pavement. So the removal of it will be less. So 775 to the previous almost 1 million. This is repairing and moving, option C, remove and relocate the roadway and utilities, the infrastructure, out of the MWRD property. So this is not just repairing it in place, but moving it. So this is the most costly of the options at $1.3 million. And then lastly, the sidewalk. To remove the road, remove the infrastructure, put in a new sidewalk, and the associated infrastructure with that sidewalk. Any questions here? So then we just wanted to flash to the fundamental principles. I think we established these with you several months ago when thinking about how the criteria we should be using to evaluate each of these concepts. And I think with this roadway work, whether we're talking about middle drive or upper drive, many of these principles apply, and you can see why having these criteria is so critical. So safety and security. The roadways are a safety consideration in the park when you think about the vehicles traveling through the park, the directions, the wayfinding that they have to go. Primarily, the safety is being addressed, we think, on Harbor Drive, but there's no question that anytime there's a car in a park, there's a safety consideration to be had. Improve, enhance, and maintain the natural environment. We've talked a lot about impervious surfaces. We've talked about trees and the value of trees in the park and to the neighbors and to the users of the park. So anytime we think about a roadway in a park, we balance impervious surfaces with natural green space, the amount of trees that could be planted in that space. So there's a consideration there. The facilities, this is not really a facility consideration, so this isn't one of the criteria that we would use. Green and sustainable practices, this too is not really one of the principles we would use. There's stormwater involved, but the stormwater principles that we're thinking about are much more as they relate to some of the wetland areas or the rainwater gardens that we're talking about. Improved accessibility, obviously with these sidewalks that we're talking about, we can have a much broader connected pedestrian network through the park if one of the drives were to turn into a sidewalk. We can't say for sure that it would be ADA accessible to the letter of the code, but as we provided you with some of that data, you can see how some of the work that's already been done in the park actually goes a long way towards making more and more of the park accessible to those people with disabilities. Efficient infrastructure, this is a key consideration here with this project. One of the things that's driving the cost of these roadway improvements is the long-term deferred maintenance on those, some of the collapsed infrastructure lines, and the knowledge that we need to fix those things to really resolve the long-term, standing water issues we have in the park. So this is a big infrastructure project. Durability and maintenance, I think considering not only these costs, but the long-term maintenance cost is also a consideration for the park board. And with roads comes long-term maintenance, with infrastructure comes long-term maintenance. And then obviously fiscal responsibility. No one knows this better than you. This is why you asked us for these costs. So obviously this is a key consideration as well. So that really is the presentation that we brought for you today. Happy to circle back and answer any more questions, of course, as you have them in your discussion. We're here.
Yeah, I think we will move to board discussion in a few minutes. We're going to invite the public to come up. And by the way, this was an excellent presentation. Thank you for the overview. Thank you for going back and reviewing the different concepts. As we had talked about at the last meeting, we thought that our next step was really to reduce the different options for circulation plans, and then based on that to go out for some additional community feedback. And a number of the commissioners commented on pros and cons of different circulation concepts would be impacted by the costs. So I think this is incredibly helpful information for us. So I thank you for giving that. And I suspect there may be some additional questions when we get into the board discussion. As I move to communication and correspondence and then public comment, we did have several notes in the packet, primarily about the GILLSON Comprehensive Plan. I would just like to briefly see a show of hands of folks who would like to address us on a topic other than the GILLSON Comprehensive Plan. Is there anyone? One person. Okay. And does that concern the landscaping plans? Tell you what, I'll give you I don't know how much of a presentation we're going to have, but again, when we come to that agenda, I'll open it back up. So a show of hands of how many people who would like to address us on the GILLSON Comprehensive Plan. Great, wonderful. I think as I normally do, I'll start on this side, I'll move front to back, and then over this side, front to back. So please, come on up, and if you'd state your name and let us know where you live and share your comments with us.
Good evening. My name is Peter Babayan. I'm a resident of Wilmette. I'm also a director of Landmarks Illinois, which submitted a letter, but we did not see it in the packet. I brought some for you. I'd like to read it into the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would try to speak into one of the two microphones. They tend
Certainly.
to be fairly, there you go.
There we go.
Perfect.
Dear President Murdoch and members of the board, it has been brought to the attention of Landmarks Illinois that the Wilmette Park District has undertaken a comprehensive planning process with community input regarding future improvements to GILLSON Park. Landmarks Illinois is a statewide historic preservation advocacy organization that provides tools and resources people need to save the special places in their communities. We commend the Park District for engaging the public in potential changes under consideration. As we understand it, the majority of residents who have participated in surveys and public meetings prefer Concept 1 of the 5 concept plans that have been presented and evaluated. As you are aware, GILLSON Park, originally Washington Park, has remarkable historic integrity and is treasured by Wilmette residents and visitors from the region. The other 4 design concepts presented to the public would be detrimental to the naturalistic historic character of the park. Created from landfill, the park was created in 1915 and originally designed by Benjamin E. Gage, one of the earliest Wilmette Park superintendents. Further improvements were made by C.D. Wagstaff and Robert E. Everly, 2 of the region's most talented landscape architects of the mid-20th century. The landscape design was inspired by noted Prairie School landscape architect Jens Jensen and includes many style elements of the Prairie School, including a stone council ring, curvilinear roadways, and informal tree plantings and open space. C.D. Wagstaff and Robert E. Everly's naturalistic landscape elements that remain today are locally beloved. Wagstaff was noted for his landscape designs for the Century of Progress 1933 Chicago World's Fair, and Everly, who knew Jensen and was mentored by him, designed many parks in Glencoe and served as its park superintendent. Several area architectural historians have evaluated GILLSON Park and believe it is most likely eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. National Register listing conveys honor to the country's most significant landmark properties. Concept 1 is the least intrusive and most respectful of GILLSON Park's historic landscape. At the Park District's November board meeting, the Lakota group made clear Concept 1 was the public's preferred choice, and we strongly encourage the board to proceed with this option. We also want to note that as the park is a strong candidate for listing in the National Register of Historic Places, changes to the park that may require state or federal permitting from entities such as the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, or the Army Corps of Engineers could trigger regulatory review with the Illinois State Historic Preservation Office. If such permits are anticipated, early consultation with the Illinois State Historic Preservation Office is highly recommended. Thank you for your consideration, and we look forward to seeing Wilmette's most prominent historic park preserved for generations to come. Submitted by Lisa DiChieri, Director of Advocacy. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Thank you. Next row, Piper? No, yes, okay.
Piper Rothschild, 1046 Elmwood Avenue. Thank you.
You may want to lower it a little bit.
So
I think you can turn it, yeah, just not the black part up top, but like that, perfect.
There you go.
Yep.
Piper Rothschild, 1046 Elmwood Avenue. Thank you for serving on the board. I'm formally submitting the path proposal that I previously delivered or discussed with each board member. I hope that you have had a chance to review it and walk it. I believe that the path addresses many of the issues that the board is facing in considering the GILLSON plan. It is simple and fully aligns with the residents' long expressed desires to make minimal changes to GILLSON. It also fits well with concept number 1, which has the consultants acknowledge the most popular option. At the same time, it allows the board to respect the natural and historic character of the park. It doesn't disturb the much-needed and well-used roads. It's green. and offers much safer, calmer, and more impervious, less impervious walking and biking path than the proposed path combining car, biking, walking along Harbor Drive. Removing roads and replacing them with lawn is not green. I believe that the path would be well received by the community, offering an attractive, interesting place to walk or bike where users would feel connected to the nature surrounding them and enjoy the experience of walking and or cycling away from cars and the road. It clearly fits in within the district's goal of encouraging residents to recreate and provides a unique walking and biking experience that currently cannot be found in Wilmette. The only response I received from the board is that the consultants want to keep the cars, bikes, and walkers together, and that the grade of the path is an issue. I don't understand either concern. Research shows that bikers feel much safer and more likely to use bike lanes when they are separate from cars. In fact, almost 60% of bikers are not comfortable riding on bike lanes next to cars and thus may not bike at all. Bike Walk Wilmette has looked at the path and is receptive to it. I also don't understand the grade concerns. The new bike walk path between Washington and Lake is steeply graded. In addition, I note that Lakota references Gowalt Hamilton on its concepts. I would expect that Gowalt Hamilton, as one of the preeminent engineering firms, could address any grade issues. None of the concepts presented enhance or improve the natural environment of GILLSON. The path proposal does, with its addition of trees, including a grove of oaks, and possible added gardens. The comprehensive plan for GILLSON presents a unique opportunity for this board and the district to be a bold leader and do something that is forward-thinking and will improve the community now and for generations. The best thing you could do, and maybe the easiest and least expensive, is to commit and fund a plan to plant more trees and add gardens to attract pollinators and other wildlife. I know you intend to adopt a master landscaping plan, but those always tend to come last and are often not fully funded or implemented. It does not have to be that way. Climate change is here, it is real, and it is now. Why debate removal of this road or that road? Why not address the existential crisis we are facing and leaving for future generations? You want to proclaim you're green, then plant more native trees and more native plants. Don't save this for last. Commit to it now and fund it now.
Thank you, Piper.
We already know that we have to cut down 60 trees. Why adopt any plan that cuts down any more? What is the plan and where are the funds in the budget to replace those trees? Almost no trees have been planted in GILLSON for 15 years. We have lost a whole generation of trees and all of the attendant benefits, monetary and ecological.
Thank you, Piper.
We can't rely on the Memorial Tree Program alone to replace enough trees to make a difference. That is what the community needs, not more parking, reconfigured roads, or picnic shelters. It's time to be courageous and heroic. Thank you.
Thank you, Piper. After the public comment, I might ask you guys to, the consultants to comment. I think you've looked at some of these alternative proposals. So, but moving forward, David or Mary. David? All right.
Can you get this mic fixed? It's very disturbing.
Are you talking
You hear
about
it?
sort of
Do
the
you hear
chirping
the-
sound? Yes, we all do.
Oh.
I'm not sure. I don't think it's because of you or the person
Oh, no,
speaking
it's
there.
not me.
Right.
It's somebody-
Whoever's standing there is what I meant. But you can go ahead and turn the mic back up so that you can speak directly into it like that. Sure. Yes.
Good evening. Good evening.
Thanks, Mary.
I am Mary Shea, a park neighbor. Lakota consultants introduced themselves at the beginning of the planning process by saying that they understood the park is within a residential neighborhood. They recognized the neighbors as stakeholders. My relief at this acknowledgement was short-lived when the initial conceptual plan was revealed last May with additional parking and destruction of trees. For many years, I've been witnessing the loss of trees at GILLSON, and sadly, there has never been a real plan to replace them. The director has stated publicly that the park is not just for neighborhood residents. We completely agree and understand that visitors from the wider region enjoy the park, especially in the summer when it is at capacity. There are 327 parking spots at the beach. That should suffice. Strategies for off-site parking have been offered. The proposed rearrangement of roadways removing some to add parking at Lakeview does not address park overuse in the summer and only creates more traffic congestion, tree removal, and safety issues. The middle road should be retained for a pedestrian link through the park. The upper drive should be retained for its important function serving park users and traffic flow. A traffic study performed for the earlier comprehensive plan determined the current flow is optimum. No citizen survey in the past 40 years has recommended more parking in the park or a change in the traffic flow. Residents from all over Wilmette favor Plan 1. Please pay attention to us, whatever our address. We all value the treasure that is GILLSON without unnecessary adjustment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Hi, can you hear me? My name is David Turman. I live at 1420 Sheridan, and I've been a resident of Wilmette for 54 years, and previously even closer to the park. And I have no elaborate data to share or points to back up my own preference. But as a resident for 54 years and as someone who's experienced the park, I strongly favor Plan 1 that does the least alteration and, as Mary has pointed out, has the least interference with the landscaping, which is, as others have pointed out, a national treasure. So, as one of the residents of Wilmette, I strongly endorse Plan 1, and I hope that, and I appreciate your listening and your having these hearings with the village, and I hope that you will pay attention to our strong preference for the least intervention and for most landscaping. Thank you.
Thanks, David. The fourth row, please. Hello.
Hello, my name is Tanya Chevalier. I live at 789 Michigan Avenue, and I haven't prepared something written here straight up, but so I have a question actually for Scott Freris about the infrastructure that Kara Kolaskis asked about. I did not hear your answer about the infrastructure underneath the roads. Can you please clarify?
Sure, go ahead.
Will work. Does this one work? Yeah, it works. The answer to the question was, can you vacate the existing utilities underground? You can vacate the utilities underground that are there. There are still going to be the removal of the subbase, as Andy described, to put in the new road. We accommodated for that, but there are still manholes within that whole corridor that transfer stormwater to other parts of the park that we have to replace. And in doing so, we also have to put in what's called under drainage to move water from specific areas of the grading, whether there's a walk or whether there's not a walk, to the overall storm system. So that has to be put back into that area.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, so thank you very much. Looking back at a summary of an engineering report that was done in 2014 of the sewers and roads by W.B. Olson, Smith Group, JJR, and William Architects, what I found was that the roads and storm sewer reconstruction there, for vehicular traffic, I know these are very low numbers, but it was 7 years ago, was $592,000. To replace those existing roads, provide complete removal of roads in lieu of grinding and replacing, was $1,053,000, and the storm sewer replacement at 75% at that time was $621,000. In this report, it says that the storm sewer work this cost doesn't change whether the roads are repaired, replaced, or removed. So I don't understand why there would be a cost difference for the infrastructure stormwater system of up to $150,000 on Middle Drive and $130,000 on Upper Drive, based on those engineering studies. Secondly, I'm wondering, what are the determining factors of your of these plans here? Are they costs? Are they others? Third, Middle Drive, because it's a road that's never been driven on, it's in much better shape than either Upper Drive or Harbor Drive, or even the exit to Washington. Finally, taking out roads and putting in lawn does not make this a green solution. This park has historic integrity, as you've heard, and we can either respect it like was done at Elmwood Dunes or destroy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tanya. Does anyone else in the fourth row wish to speak with us? All right, fifth row, Eleanor. Okay. All right. Anybody in the back row?
Thank you. My name is Mary Seifarth. Can you hear me? Good voice. I live in the Coach House at 735 Michigan Avenue. As I learned looking through the Washington Park historical review of GILLSON Park, I noticed that there were originally on the stone pillars on either side of Washington Avenue, as you come out toward Michigan Avenue, there were filials on the top and lights facing west. As a biker, and I go down, do you understand what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. The trapezoidal stone pillars, there were lights on those originally. I would like to see those return. As I ride my bike from 735 or around down to the lake, even on the longest day of the year, June 21st, it is a dangerous passage. The cars don't see you too much. I have a loud horn and a louder voice, and luckily I've not been hit by cars exiting the park. It's a great one-way circulation, but I think replacing or returning to the original design of lights on those trapezoidal columns, and they do need some tree trimming around there. The yews have grown all over it. You may never have seen them in the... But let's replace the lights on those trapezoidal columns as an exit entrance location. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wonder if it's just that microphone that's causing the problem, the one on our right. But is there a way to turn one of those two off? Like we can turn ours off with a button? No?
We have technical advice.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Can you turn off just one of the two microphones? No, it's all,
Okay.
all in
Right.
it.
And again,
Sorry, I think it needs something to do with the.
I think it's the
monitors
speaker.
that put in. I was not here when they did
Okay.
that, so.
again, we understand, and I don't know if people listening remotely can hear, but there's a chirping sound. I said that I thought it was Steve's dog hidden here, but not really here. But again, I apologize if it's distracting for anyone. There obviously are some technical issues, and there's nothing that we can do about it, so I apologize. Is there anyone else who wishes to address us on this side of the room? All right, moving over to this side in the front. Anybody in the... Yes, please. Alan.
Alan Golden, 2516 Laurel Lane. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak. You'll be happy to know I did not come here armed with a bunch of data, graphs, and statistical analysis tonight, much to your happiness, I'm sure, but I've armed with an opinion. Obviously, the data from our landscape consultants have pointed to plan number 1 as being the most popular one in the village. I also did a very informal survey, very informal, over the last month, when a bunch of my sailing friends and I just kind of gathered down at the beach for some social time. Everybody also that I talked to is very much in favor of Plan 1. I don't have numbers, I didn't Pareto anything out, but I would urge the board to listen to what seems to be the majority in the village and adopt the simplest plan that leaves most of the park the way it is and fixes what needs to be fixed. We all agree that what needs to be fixed needs to be fixed. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Please.
Hello, my name is Ross Green. I live at 116 6th Street. I've lived there for more than 30 years. I submitted a letter to the board. I'm not going to recap that letter at this point, so I just have one comment and a couple of questions. The comment is that, like so many other people, I support option one, but I support option one with one slight modification, which would be to include, as part of option one, the replacement of Middle Drive with a pervious paved pedestrian walkway. I don't believe that that has been costed out. It looked to me like the three options for removing or replacing Middle Drive that were costed out didn't include replacing it with pervious pavers. It included, for example, a 12-foot concrete sidewalk. But let's look into replacing it with pervious pavers, which I think would be consistent with the view of, as Mr. Tanucci said during the last month's presentation, the view of most people in the village that its Middle Drive already is used as a pedestrian walkway. And then there's no need to provide compensatory parking when Middle Drive is removed because it's not currently used for parking and historically has not been used for parking. And that gets to the first of my two questions, and that is, in spite of the fact that Middle Drive has not historically been used for parking, it keeps showing up on these concept plans as having a baseline amount of parking of 40 cars. And that is misleading. I think most people in the village recognize that that's misleading. And I guess I would ask the board, is the board prepared to direct the Lakota group to cease counting 40 parking spaces on Middle Drive as part of the baseline? That's my first question. And my second question, in case there is anyone on the board who's interested in moving the upper roadway, setting aside the issue of whatever the legal rights of the MWRD may or may not be in connection with the removal or movement or replacement of upper roadway, has anyone on the board or has anyone on behalf of the Park District reached out to the MWRD to find out what their view would be if the upper roadway were to be moved, and if, as a result thereof, the ability of non-residents of Wilmette to use the upper roadway for parking free of charge were somehow to be restricted or limited? I mean, that strikes me as something that, could be a substantial political issue, and I don't think it would be wise to go down that path without asking the MWRD for their views. So has anyone done that? I mean, we're pretty far into this process yet. Has anyone sounded out the MWRD? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ross. Anyone else on this side, please? Yes.
Try this one, see if it works better. Rich Hosfeld, 744 Sheridan, live there with my wife Taylor and our now 3 kids, Ellie, Coco, and Henry. Okay, this one's not working.
Perfect.
That works?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I'm going to talk right at it.
Yep.
Right.
Thanks, Ross. Rich.
So,
thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Mike. So one, thank you for letting us be here. I mean, I think looking at the last board meeting, you requested this, you asked for the feedback, and this report is really, really insightful. I think you stole my thunder a little bit on the last comments, and Commissioner Clark, you noted this at the last meeting as well. Middle Drive has just never been used for parking. It's always been pedestrian. It sits directly adjacent to a playground, and it's a little challenging to understand how we would include that in the overall parking count. Our number one concern here is safety. On Sunday I was reminded of how fast kids are. We were at Wallace Bowl for a preschool holiday sing, and I'm carrying around my 2-week-old son in a car seat as our 2.5-year-old is sprinting along the Wallace Bowl, and luckily preschool teacher stepped up to help catch her. If you've walked Middle Drive, you know how close the playground is to Middle Drive. There's no barrier between the tall pirate ship and Middle Drive. The bridge leads directly there. It's probably the distance from you, Mike, to the wall here. And imagine how fast a 2.5-year-old can run that. It's just not safe, right? Commissioner Frazier, when we walked it, you noted to me how in the city, how do you keep these playgrounds safe when there's cars driving nearby? It's because they put fences all around the playground. They put cages to keep everybody in because you have to. It's the only way to keep kids safe. I don't think any of us wants to see that playground fenced in, but it would be the only safe option if we allowed cars to go on Middle Drive. Third is accessibility. And Commissioner Duffy, I think you noted this at the last meeting as well, the importance of having pathways where people can traverse, whether you're in ADA situation, whether you're a mother pushing a stroller, a father pulling a wagon with 3 kids. You can't pull wagons and push strollers or go with a wheelchair over grass or gravel. Having some type of a paved service there is incredibly helpful as we go through the park. And finally, fourth, cost. The good news is if we're going to eliminate one of these 2 roads and do the work to shrink one to 12 feet, it's actually $100,000 cheaper to take Middle Drive and make that into that 12-foot pedestrian pathway and leave Upper Drive as it is, versus the other way around. If we were going to take Upper Drive and do 12 feet there and make Middle Drive into a parking lot, it's about $100,000 cheaper to do the former. So we can keep our parks safe, keep our kids safe, save money, be true to the original plan. If there was a way to leave it without ripping up all the infrastructure, that's great too. Just please keep Middle Drive safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Does anyone else on this side wish to address us? Okay. All right, before we come back to any commissioner questions or additional comments, if I could ask one of the consultants to come back up and just briefly speak. Piper had suggested an alternative walkway. I think she had made the comment that that we wanted to keep bikes, cars, and walkers together. I'm not sure that was really the intent, but I think that with the infrastructure there, but I know that there has been consideration at the very beginning of this process and then later in the process about looking at walkways in other locations. Could you just give us a quick update on what you've looked at in the past and any issues or concerns you've had with that?
Okay, so I think there's a few points to make here. Throughout the whole process, the master plan effort has aimed to improve safety in the park by contemplating walkways. It's aimed to improve accessibility through the park with the contemplation of walkways, many of which were very poorly received when we talked about walkways, say, up on the bluff overlooking the beach house, where there aren't technically accessible paths.
Could I just clarify that? So, for example, we do have this perhaps 10-foot wide walkway, bikeway that goes from Michigan down to the parking lot in front of the beach house. That's not an ADA accessible path, is that correct?
Technically, it is not an accessible path.
Okay.
It does not meet the letter of the code. It gets close, but it does not meet the letter of the code.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So,
And again, one more thing, and I'm sorry to interrupt. All of the paths that have been proposed in this master plan are ADA compliant. Is that correct? No, that's not.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Some of them are pure replacement of what's already there.
Well, for example, along the harbor, I think there's actually some stone paths with some steps, but the new space at Harbor Drive,
Yeah.
which is where I think we've been most concerned about safety and accessibility, are those ADA accessible? Great. Just to clarify. Thank you. Thank you.
So that's where I was going with that.
Thank you.
Yep. And the path that Piper is talking about has not been vetted as well as any other path that we've contemplated. There were a couple initial concerns. One, in the location where it's drawn, it would be less accessible to the letter of the code than the pathway along Harbor Drive because of the grade that it would have to traverse, because of the slopes that it would have to traverse. This is not to say that there are steep embankments. It's just to say that the grade we think the elevation that has to be traversed along this path is steeper than the walkway along Harbor Drive.
Okay.
It also just adds additional pavement to the park in the way that, again, it's not fully vetted, but in a way that might be more so than the pathway along Harbor Drive. Several of the places where that pathway has been drawn have been contemplated as pathways as part of this process. One along Middle Drive. We're currently talking about a pathway along Middle Drive as part of the master plan. We've heard tonight, we've provided costs, it's been a contemplation. That was a comment from the public that we heard during public outreach. Another drive, another part of that walkway is along the pathway between, say, Overlook Drive and the Beach House parking lot where there isn't currently a sidewalk. There are some challenges there. We've noted those challenges in the past with the location of the existing maintenance building behind Wallace Bowl. That's just a separate little contemplation of that pathway as drawn slightly further to the north.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Do any of the commissioners have additional questions for the consultants? Otherwise, I'll open it up for
Can I
discussion.
actually, sorry, Andy, before you sit down, can I ask a question just about, I know we're focused on roads, but could you just for background purposes, I know there have been some comments about not making any changes, but my understanding is, and you have it priced out, the infrastructure, the stormwater changes, just for background, just could you mention quickly, so those are changes that are deemed to be essential and are part of this, and I realize how much of that work, so just from the purposes of what we're talking about today, is actually under the roads or next to the roads and is affecting sort of the changes. Obviously, they need to be improved, but can you just talk about how that relates?
Can you flash back to any one of those pricing slides? Both roadways and stormwater management are considered infrastructural. They support all the programming, all the needs, all the uses in the park. In the pricing, roadway and circulation systems are the infrastructure or the roads that you see. Infrastructure, stormwater, that's all the subterranean. So that's how you can see the costs broken out. Infrastructure, stormwater is subterranean. That's the system that moves the stormwater through the site, off the roadways. The roadways and the circulation systems, those are the systems that move the vehicles. So that's how it's been priced, and those are the notations that we're using here tonight.
And these are the infrastructure and stormwater projects that are most closely connected to and related to the roads, or?
They are, yes.
Okay.
Underneath all of the roads are an associated stormwater management system. You see the grates in the roads or adjacent to the roads. That's what collects water. That when it falls on the roads, it collects there. It moves very quickly. It needs a place to go. So we deliver it to stormwater drains that then move it through the park. That's that line. That's that system of green lines. Thank you, Steve.
So this is all storm, this color green.
Got it. And sorry, last question. When was the last time, do you know when the stormwater, when it was addressed or repaired or maintained or?
We believe it's pre the 2013, 2014 analysis engineering referendum project. So it's over a decade, and based on how much of it looks, it's even much longer than that.
And in that immediately prior period, I only have information going back to 2009. Maybe Steve goes a little bit further, but it was the staff was just repairing as they could where certain lines collapsed. But it was certainly a piecemeal approach. It was not in any way a comprehensive approach. I suspect the stormwater system is decades and decades old, 50, 60.
That's what it looks like to us.
Or longer, yeah.
That's only from a visual inspection. So much of it you can't actually do an inspection because it's just completely clogged or caved in or collapsed. Yeah, thanks.
So these are repairs that are not going to have to be done in another decade or maybe even 20 years, but much further out. Okay. Thank you for the clarification and background.
So I'm wondering if Director Wilson, if you could help us out with one of our residents asked about basically the historical use of Middle Drive. People have come up and said it's never been used for parking. I know I've parked on it. And then Also about the MWRD cooperation. Is there any necessary cooperation with MWRD if we're going to do anything to that road, period?
Sure. Obviously, when we use absolutes like never or always, we sometimes misspeak. So Middle Drive has historically not been used for parking, so that's where the public perception comes from. But there have been points in time in history in which it has been used, and it has been used more often in the last 2 to 3 years for events at Lakeview Center during the season, as well as at the start of this year, we were trying to move a little bit of the congestion of Sailing Beach down closer towards the Rock Pier for the trail-in permits and the rentals of our equipment, and we were parking vehicles in there for that. That operational change wasn't very successful, so we've actually moved everything back to the Sailing Beach. But so over the last couple of years, we've definitely used it a little differently than we have historically.
And may I add, because I actually spoke with someone that I know down at the Dog Beach just the other day who grew up here in Wilmette, and his comment was that when he was younger, and he's about my age, so this probably was about 50 years ago, that there was parking on Middle Drive. And he said that time when he was a child that Middle Drive was used for parking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I spoke with someone who grew up here who was hired by the police as like just extra security when there were events at Wallace Bowl. And it was interesting because I asked him 2 things. Well, what kind of events were they? And he laughed. He said, oh, it was musical acts for old people. And here he is as a teenager, and now he is an old person. But one of his roles was helping just direct traffic through the park, and people parked on Middle Drive for those shows. Could you talk about MWRD?
Sure. With MWRD, if we pursue any work within that land, a conversation definitely needs to be had. We did do a stakeholder meeting with MWRD at the outset of this, just like we did a stakeholder with Sailing Beach members and neighbors of the park. And at the time, this concept wasn't even one that we were thinking about, so we did not specifically have that conversation. We did have the conversation in and around the restrictions that they require for parking on this roadway because it touches their land, and we talked about sharing of surveys to make sure we can all confirm and agree to where property lines are, but we did not talk about actually moving it. So if that's something we want to consider further, I do agree that it is a conversation that should be had.
But just to clarify, MWRD has never asked for public access, non-resident access to parking on Middle Drive or on Overlook Drive, which are clearly both on our property. Is that correct?
Correct, because they wouldn't have the authority to do so.
Correct. Okay.
So, but is it necessary if we were to just renovate Upper Drive, right? Tear it up, put it back the way it was? Do we need permission from MWRD, or do we just have to notify MWRD that we're doing that?
We would, and Scott or Andy might be able to speak to this, but my understanding from the stakeholder meeting is we would have to definitely notify and get permission, but their take was,
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what about if we were to talk about moving the entrance? Is that something, again, same thing, right?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments, or would someone like to begin the discussion?
I'll begin. First and foremost, I'd like to say I appreciate that we are at this point of how we're layering our views. It just makes so much more sense to me that we start with this before we can move on to where different things could potentially go, or even our landscaping plan, because we have to know how we're going to move cars around the park. So thank you. This makes a lot of sense, and I think it makes it so much easier just to talk to residents about it. So it's a great place to start. I always try to keep in mind why I was elected and why I choose to serve on this board, and it is to serve, per our mission statement, to protect open spaces and natural resources for future generations. And I think that's very important. Change is so uncomfortable, and I understand that sometimes it's easier to leave things alone. I don't feel I was elected to just accept things as they are. I think I was elected to try to say, what could it be and how can we envision it differently? So with that being said, safety and sustainability are my primary goals. My initial thoughts are that I still prefer a park that reduces vehicular traffic and promotes bicycling and pedestrian use. Any plan that brings more cars further into the park is not one that I intend to vote for. To achieve this, I still feel that the removal of both middle and upper drives makes the most sense to me. Piper, I thought your pathway was extremely thoughtful, and as a biker and walker of the park, I love the idea of it. I think it could be functional and just an amazing use of space. I do not see it replacing the Harbor Drive walkway. I see it in addition to that. Any concept that adds more natural environments, not just green lawn, but more natural environments to the park, I would love to explore. I feel that by removing Upper Drive, we could achieve that. As resident Rich spoke to, we happen to have daughters who take a dance class together. And having a 2.5-year-old, I completely agree. I find that Middle Drive is a place that is very close to the playground there and is a concern. I do not wish to see a fence encircling that playground. I think that it would be aesthetically horrible for the park. I also do not like the idea of cars, again, being brought further into the park to make a roundabout. In the last meeting, I discussed some turnabout at the entrance to the park. I still think that if we're removing a road, I want to have a turnabout accessible sooner in the park. I do not want more cars being pushed onto upper if we keep it, or middle if we keep it, especially middle. I do not want cars being pushed all the way down there. If a single roadway is preferred, I lean towards it being Upper Drive. I will probably go against many of my commissioners in saying this, but I believe that if we're going to invest in it, we should get it off of MWRD land. I understand the residents' opinions who have spoken here tonight. I think looking into it further does make sense. However, if we are investing in this park, let's put it on land that we have control over forever. I don't like the what ifs. I believe those are my comments as of now. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, you had talked about a preference perhaps seeing no motorized traffic on either of these two. You would like to see a pathway on either or both or neither?
Thank you for
just to
bringing that up.
clarify.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do, for Middle Drive, prefer there to be a paved surface there. Pushing a stroller, pulling a wagon on a permeable surface is a nightmare. And for use during the winter, I walk the park year-round. To walk the park on a permeable surface that's potentially not paved is also something I would hope we wouldn't have to deal with. So I would like it to be a paved surface.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I have a curiosity question. And I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm not trying to jump, but I feel that it's more or less a foregone conclusion that we're adding a sidewalk that runs along Harbor Drive. It feels that's the direction this is kind of going. So in the wintertime, is that something that's going to be shoveled or plowed? Or, I mean, is there any contemplation about how we're going to take care of that? I know that we plow the roadway, and in the wintertime, anybody going through the park is going to walk on the roadway. So is then the sidewalk going to get taken care of, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's many walkways in many of our parks that are heavily traveled enough in wintertime where we do get to them. They're obviously not the first priority in our snow removal efforts,
Sure.
but eventually it would possibly be a walkway that we would include in that effort.
So Cecilia, as a dog beach owner, does that sidewalk that runs?
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
The sidewalk along Overlook Drive is always kept clear during the winter. So
Yeah, okay.
that any sidewalk along Harbor Drive.
Yeah.
would
I would
also
hope
be
so
clear.
as
Yeah,
well.
just, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
thinking as,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good question.
We're trying to get people out of the street, so we would
Yeah,
want them
right,
to
and
go
that's why,
year-round.
that's why I asked the question.
Good question.
Unless if we go around, okay, I'll go. And I'll just it's prefaced by saying that, I brought up that I'd been told by a fellow Dog Beach member that Mill Drive was used for parking when he was a child, but I have said before and said last week, I think last meeting, that I've never seen parking on Middle Drive. So, and I say, I've come, so I'm only raising it as a historical kind of curiosity or, support that, yes, it has been. But that, I've also always said as well that, I kind of agree that Middle Drive, the parking spots in Middle Drive should not be counted. I mean, I don't want to say, I guess I'm just saying, and in 30 years, like I've never not had a parking spot whenever I've gone down to GILLSON. So I'm not feeling that we need to replace all the parking spots. And I've also made it very clear, and I continue saying that I do not really see the purpose of Middle Drive. I mean, I have walked, I do walk it as well, and I can understand, having a walkway there, but do we need a 20-foot wide walkway with curbs for pedestrians or, bikers? I'm really not sure. So, I mean, out of this, I'm not even sure we really need 12 feet wide, but I think, based on all of, I think I said last time, I've never understood why Middle Drive was there, and I continue to not quite understand. So I would be, and I also just think the disruption of tearing it up and then replacing everything, just that's, I think there was someone wrote who said, well, the construction, how much, carbon does that put into the atmosphere? And that's where I guess I feel the same thing. I mean, why are we putting more, there's been a lot of concern, talk about ecological consequences. So why are we taking up repaving and putting back more? I mean, of a 20-foot wide part, walkway. We take that out, we take out stormwater, we don't have to worry about it, we don't have to worry about maintenance, we, use the, but I agree that I think we need a surface that's more easily traversable by wheeled vehicles, whatever it is. But I don't think it needs to be necessarily 20 feet wide. I would also make a comment that both the south and north part of Middle Drive empty out into busy roadways. There isn't, so that's something like I assume probably would be taken care of. So sort of one of the comments about this extra pathway and that goes along Middle Drive for bike path, and they're coming out onto roadways that cars are going by, and there are no stop signs on either side. So it creates more of a danger where I think, we can be addressed, but just kind of realize it so that just having that as a continued walkway is really not a safe walkway because of that you just kind of come out and cars, and there's no stop signs and cars just can be going by. So that's partly, one of the thing is that I will vote for safety over every time on this thing. So, and that's that's here again, one of my concerns in that. As far as Upper Drive, I think I said last week, and I see no reason to change my opinion that I think it's fine where it is. I would either go with Allison. I'd either say either remove it or replace and repair it. I do not see moving it off of MWRD. I really don't see the advantages to that. So that is kind of where I am. Where I'm coming there at this point. So I would agree, either remove it or leave it as it is.
Okay.
So that's it.
Thank you.
Sure.
I don't want to spend too much time repeating things that have already been said. I generally agree that I don't see a reason for cars on Middle Drive or parking. So I believe I shared that in the last meeting as well. So my thinking is still consistent. I did think long and hard about the path that Piper shared with us as well. I like the concept of having more meandering opportunities through the park, if you will. And I have to say that I absolutely love our new 1 mile path in the community playfields. And even this afternoon was appreciating it. What I am learning as I go through that path is it takes me through areas of the park that I would otherwise not have traversed, right? When it walks around through the north end of the playfields, you wouldn't have normally gone there. You would have felt like you were
The northeast
too close
corner.
to someone's yard, or it was kind of muddy and marshy back there. But as I do that, each time I genuinely sit there and appreciate the trees. Like they feel like there's more of them because you're getting up and close to them. So I have gotten a little naturey more so as I've been enjoying this path. And I think about that through this lens as well. And so I would absolutely prefer to keep a walking path, again, because it does take us so close to the playground through Middle Drive. I agree with the other commissioners that 20 feet sounds pretty wide. I think there's a middle ground there that doesn't have to feel like golf carts need to pass each other both directions, but just enough that a bike could pass each other in both directions. I appreciate that bumpy surfaces are hard to traverse, and I've heard in previous presentations that sometimes those impervious surfaces, as much as we aspire to do well by them, they provide maintenance challenges, and that the weeds and there's other things that can cause longer term challenges. And so I can accept if it's paved. I'd prefer it to be narrower, but I wonder if it could. I struggle to balance the idea of changing any part of it. Does that step away from this, the historical design by the original architects and the landscape architects as been presented? And we've received several emails about, the preserving the spirit of the design. And so I do appreciate that, and that there was thought into that is well above my knowledge of landscape design. So I don't know if making some curves or some loops towards the end to soften the exits onto the busy roads, as Cecilia mentioned, if that's acceptable within staying within the spirit of the design. That could be something we survey the community about if we get to that point. That is and the other thought is if we were to do that and maybe tweak the ends of that trail to make it a little more meandering, if you will, that would be a great opportunity to add some extra oaks, gardens, or other landscaping enhancements, as Piper had suggested, in which I think everyone has written in wanting to improve the landscape design, which I know will be the later phase. With respect to Upper Drive, I would love to know if paving the surface were an option, just cleaning up the curb, and is there an inexpensive option that buys us 5 more years? I don't know. It feels very expensive to put it back exactly as it is. I don't have much appetite for change. I do see value in moving cars into the park briefly, should they need to access Lakeview or Wallace, and getting them back out rather than sending them through the whole loop. So I would lean towards keeping a vehicular a driving road there. For the cost differential that we're talking about, it does seem to make sense to move off of the land that's not ours. I did have the same thought as one of our publics shared about asking the MWRD, and so I would like to know their soft, thought on that before I could vote formally. But if they did not foresee a concern, I would hope that that's only a benefit to them, in that we are not any longer intruding on their property on a regular daily basis. So if that were to vet out, then I would be comfortable with that plan. Acknowledging that there are some trees that are sacrificed in that situation. But again, we do have a lot of plans to plant those. And I would like to ask the board tonight that we could make a commitment to the community that we are intending to budget for trees. I know it's already in our capital plan and such, but maybe we can put that concern to rest so that the public knows that that's absolutely part of the spirit of our plans.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe just to speak to this briefly, because last Wednesday we did have our budget meeting, and in that meeting we did allocate $25,000 per year basically into perpetuity, both in the first 5 years and the next 5 years, and that's as far out as we go in planning, specifically for additional funds for additional trees, in addition to the funds that were already in the operating side of the budget. In addition to that, and Director Wilson, correct me if I'm wrong, we are adding significant numbers of new staff in the Parks and Planning Department, both some additional expertise and additional staff people to create additional crews that can then specialize and can better care for the trees. Would you just speak to that again? I know we've mentioned it in past meetings, but I think it is worth highlighting. So let's go ahead and do that.
Sure. Again, the operational budget for the Parks Department included, $8,000 to $10,000 for tree planting specifically. The board added, as Commissioner Murdoch pointed out, $25,000 a year for trees and other plantings within our capital budget in perpetuity. As far as staffing at the Parks Department, we're adding, just within the park maintenance side, 3 full-time positions. One is a horticulturist position that is going to be an expert to look at all aspects of what we do. Most of what we do are grasses and trees and planting beds and things like that. We have certified arborists on staff, but also we're creating crew leaders, designating different crews to focus on special disciplines, which will make us operate more efficiently and allow us to implement landscape plans and keep up with the inventory of the condition of all of our plantings, and then address those conditions as needed.
Great, thank you. Right. Commissioner Duffy, do you have any comments on the plans?
Well, I don't have really strong feelings in any one way or another. We had a lot of feedback about, no change is good change. Keep the plan as it is. And yet, there's also a calling to have Middle Drive turned more into a pedestrian and biking way, which, that's the direction that is preferred. I'm fine with that. As far as Upper Drive is concerned, I lean towards having more control over our own roads than having less control over roads, especially if we're going to spend $1 million to fix it. So I would also say that if there is a strong preference on the board to move the entrance to try and alleviate some backups, because if we move Upper Drive off of MWRD, the only access to the park will be to pass holders, not to anybody that does not have a pass. So there will have to be some training time and therefore there will be some backups right at the entrance. We'll probably have to move the shack that shelters the attendant that is at the Y junction right now. We'll have to create something at the entryway. We'll have to sign it. So I just think that if we move Upper Drive, it would make sense to move the entryway some, just to create more space off of Michigan Avenue. I'm absolutely in favor of the pedestrian walkway along Harbor Drive. I know that as we move towards the overall landscape plan for the park, and we also start coordinating with the Memorial Tree Program, there will be a lot more plantings going on over time. And I have confidence that the beautification of the park will begin to take shape as we move forward over the next 2 and 3 years. You'll start to see change, but growth takes a long time. One of our meetings, I referenced Elmwood Dunes. It's about 7 years old now, and we're really, over the last 3 years, really starting to see certain plants that we've planted over time take hold, and not just, like I said in the meeting, we used to just have goldenrods showing up, and now we've got a lot of other plants and grasses that we've been cultivating over time, and we've even had some volunteers. We've got an oak growing there now that it looks like it's 1 or 2 years old. So it just takes a lot of time when you're dealing with nature. And we have not, as a park district, not been spending a lot of time on GILLSON, and that's because I believe when the referendum was voted down, the park district was afraid to do anything there, and yet they took some monies in reserves and built the beach house because it was something that had to get done. And I think there's been a hesitancy to really spend time and energy on some of the trees and the plantings in the park because we've been spending so much time trying to figure out what to do with the park. And now that we're there, and hopefully by the first quarter of next year, we'll be moving forward with a plan, and we'll start to see progress in the park. So it's like I said, going back to how I started, I don't have really strong feelings about any of the roadways. I'm listening to what people have to say. And as I shared, I think some things make some sense based on what the feedback we're getting. And I'm happy to listen to everybody else and just, come along and support everybody on the board.
Can I make a follow-up comment? Sorry.
Sure.
You started by talking about the access and the choke point if the road were not on MWRD property. I guess I feel like that is a decision yet to come.
Yeah.
I'm not taking it as part and parcel together that by relocating the road, we would automatically put a gatehouse there. We would still have the option to make it permit parking the same as Overlook where you need a sticker or not, or choose to leave it public. We would still have that option, correct?
Absolutely. Right.
Certainly we could still enforce parking should we choose, but I'm not thinking about that through the lens of having a gatehouse there at the front of the Sheridan Road.
When you say gatehouse, that's not what I was saying. I mean, there's just this little shack at the Y to keep the kids out of the rain as they sit there and look for stickers. And that's all that I am suggesting that we may need near the entryway, because there will have to be a staff person standing at the entryway, like there is one now constantly at that Y intersection, directing people to the public way and to the pass parking.
Well, that's what I guess in my mind, I don't know that there has to be someone there. Like it is today, you could drive in and you just better observe the signage if it says you can't park, but you might need to drop someone off at the tennis courts, at the beach, at the thing and move your car along. So I'm just cautious about putting that out there too far that there's going to be a pass checker at that side of the park.
On this topic, though, I guess I would sort of talk about the alternative, that look what we've seen this past year, that the village has worked really hard, made a number of changes to try to address some of the challenges in the immediate neighborhood. I think they tripled or even more so the parking fines. And, we heard from Rich and some other folks that there's no parking on his street, and yet 8 a.m. on Saturdays, it's parked up and people are taking their $100 tickets, and whether they're paying them or whatever. So I think, and Steve, you could probably talk from an historical standpoint, I think that in the past we decided that we needed a checker, if you will, to ensure that folks who weren't supposed to park on Overlook weren't parking, because the past experience was if it's sort of on the honor system or on the ticket system, that didn't work. So now whether we ultimately make a roadway open to only residents or open to residents and non-residents free of charge, or only for residents or non-residents who buy some sort of a sticker, all of those decisions would be made down the road. But I would assume that based on our past experience, that if we do have parking restrictions, that we'd want to have some, especially in the summertime, have some sort of staff member who's doing some initial screening of that. And maybe you could give us some of the history on why we've chosen to have that person there in the past.
Yeah, I don't know if I can give you the absolute history because it predates my time in Wilmette, but I can tell you that when you have a mixture of parking rules throughout the park, and in essence we have 4 different parking areas, it's a lot for someone who's arriving at the park to understand. So that person is there as much for informational purposes for users of the park as it is for enforcement. The Village of Wilmette has the parking enforcement. They have the staff that are down there walking Overlook, walking through the beach parking lot, looking for people who have the proper stickers and writing the tickets. So kind of to Commissioner Kozlowskis's point, in theory, that if it's all one single type of parking and all the same rules everywhere, signage versus a person might be effective. But to Commissioner Duffy's point, change in operations is going to have its rough period of transition for sure, and there will be plenty of violators that eventually, maybe over time with ticketing, it'll make a positive impact. But as you said, the village has been fighting the same issues in the neighborhood for quite some time.
Okay.
Just a couple of additional thoughts. I do appreciate seeing these options shown so clearly with costs broken out, and we haven't really talked about the costs, I think. But interesting to see that there's sort of a variation, not that we can say, for both middle and upper and as low as 680,000 up to 1.3, but just helpful to know that that's a significant difference, right, in some of these, but still not millions or not. It's just helpful to kind of understand as we look at these. So thank you. I just want to make a few points. One, I think we've talked about and we've heard the importance of protecting the integrity, protecting the natural environment. We've talked about trees and not just protecting trees, but replacing trees and caring for our trees. And we've talked about that in committees, but just I think that's important to continue to state consistently. But I also think that we can make some changes while still protecting the environment and still not disrupting too many trees and so the one most feedback that I probably get is on Middle Drive because I spend most of my time in the park at the playground. And I do know and hear from young families that a pathway there free of cars would be an asset to families who are on scooters or with strollers or for that or learning to ride a bike, whatever it is. That would be something that I know would be utilized from feedback that I've received at the park. And then another just thought on Upper Drive. I also do have concerns about a significant investment on land that we don't own. However, not saying that should preclude us from exploring that as an option. But I think potentially if we do consider that option, those conversations with MWRD could maybe help inform, would need some reassurance or understanding of their potential, whether it's interference or taking the land back or whatever it is, if we were to invest in it. So just a thought if we do consider that. Otherwise, I think everything else has been mentioned.
Thank you. Commissioner Goble?
Sure, thank you. So lots of good comments already made this evening from fellow commissioners and the public, so thank you for that. Again, as noted, it's really helpful to understand the costs and the puts and takes associated with each of these 7 choices, 3 for Middle Drive and 4 for Upper Drive. In particular, I'm in agreement with a few of the comments that have been made with respect to removing Middle Drive as a drivable path. I am in favor of either removing it and restoring it to lawn or removing it and restoring it as a walkway. I see pros to both of those options. I don't see a need to keep it as a road or as a part-time parking area. And then with respect to Upper Drive, I think that there is a lot to be said for the argument of as we are restoring and investing in the park that we do so on land that is available to us. I would note there was a public comment that was made, and I just want to discuss this with all of you. There was a comment and a suggestion that if we were to remove Upper Drive, there is a fear in this particular resident that MWRD might do something with the land they have. I just wanted to sort of validate or invalidate that fear that something might be done with the land that is theirs, so to speak.
That MWRD would come in and do something drastically different than having open space in that area?
This particular resident wrote, what if they make a parking lot?
Yeah.
I just wanted to air that and maybe rule that out.
I don't see any circumstance in which that would become a reality. I don't think MWRD would want to do that, let alone do I think that they would do it over, I would imagine, the hue and cry of our public.
Exactly. Okay. Well, that's what I assumed. It seemed to be perhaps a little far afield. I think that it's
And if I
interesting.
could interrupt, and I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and they would not be permitted to do it under the current lease. They would have to
terminate the lease. They would have to terminate the
Just to
lease or wait
There's
for
a
it to
whole lot
expire.
of
Right.
legal hoops, if
Sure.
you will, to get there. And so I think as we're considering removing Middle Drive and then the idea of how we might relocate or restore Upper Drive, I think those are both very appealing. It's interesting to note that if we were to change the parking options, removing both one that might be an occasional parking space in Middle Drive and the Upper Drive, which is a routine parking area, I think it would meet some of the needs of the residents, which is to perhaps make the park a little bit more available for passive use, less for recreation. I do want to note, though, that if we took out all of those roads, it could lead to more people seeking street parking in the neighborhood. It is one of those unintended consequences that people who can't find space in GILLSON will then circulate looking for more space nearby. We have seen several of the streets closest to GILLSON have some additional parking restrictions during the summer. I would presume that if we added more of those, or if the village added more of those, it would simply push the parking issue further into Wilmette. So with any choice, there are some other consequences that are made. And then, just lastly, all of these costs, even if we took the lowest or the highest, and I made my own little grid, I would just note it'd be helpful to see all the prices side by side. But even if we took all the lowest, and so did you, all the lowest and all the highest, we are still looking at only a difference of a 100,000, 200,000. They are still modestly similar in the scope of a very large project. So just to recap, I'm in favor of removing Middle Drive and restoring it as either walking or walking on concrete or walking on lawn. I'm also in favor of removing Upper, and I think there's a good argument to relocate it to land that is part of the park districts. I see lots of positives ahead. I think we've taken some time to look at the choices and hear the ideas, and so I'm while I know we sometimes set a timetable and hope it can go quickly, I think it's been worth taking the time to do these things thoughtfully.
I would agree, and thank you. I was making the same grid you were. I'm just laughing about that. Before I get into my comments, one more question for the consultants, because we were just talking about costs, and I don't know if there's anything that you can do to help me understand, but I think when I first reviewed the cost estimates, what I was struck by was, you'd say it two different ways. Either one, how expensive it is to remove things, or how cheap it is to put things in. And my experience in construction is the opposite, that it's actually fairly inexpensive to remove things, and it's quite expensive to put things back in or replace. But that's not what we're seeing. That back to Commissioner Goebel's comment on Middle Drive, the range, if we remove and regrade, we'd spend approximately $680,000. But to put in a new roadway and new sewers is only $215,000 more for all that pavement. Or, at Upper Drive, if we keep Upper Drive as is, it would cost us $980,000. But if we make a walkway that's basically half the size, it's only $5,000 less. And I know there's a lot of information in how you came to these numbers, but I don't know if there's anything that you can say to me. And obviously, as we get into this process, these are estimates at this point, and we have contingencies, and we haven't done engineering, and obviously this will go out to bid. But is there any insight you can give me to help me understand why what we see with these numbers is counterintuitive to me?
Commissioner Murdoch, as we pointed out earlier, there's a fairly sizable backup to all these numbers, so they're not just pulled out of thin air. The demolition costs are the cost to mass excavate all of the asphalt, all the base material, and all the trucking involved in pulling everything out of here. So we tried to factor in the costs of, it's not an easy site to work on, to get into. It has to come through all the neighborhoods down Lake Avenue and get it all out of here. Putting it back together was actually easier from the standpoint of bringing stuff back in, because we're laying a top coat of asphalt, we're putting the gravel back in, all of the grading, all the infrastructure, all the sleeves that go in, all the seeding, the fine grading, topsoil. Topsoil is a huge number which falls into landscaping, a huge volume of topsoil when you have to fill in all these areas that we're converting back from pavement to lawn area. So we've gone through that, we've put in numbers, and I would agree with you wholeheartedly. When you go out to bid, you'll find the ability to find better numbers. There's a sizable contingency for the mere purposes that we are operating in an inflationary period beyond most of our comprehension of where it's going to go next year or the year after that, particularly with materials. But I will note that buried into all these costs are the small things like replacing some of the lighting that's out there. If we take out the road, there's some lights in some of those streets. We've got to move them or take them down or bury the electric or move the electric. So we have all kinds of costs built in there, and I don't know if it's showing an accurate depiction of what you would expect to see, but we can certainly sit with you and walk through all the
No, this is very
expectations.
helpful.
Yeah.
I appreciate the explanation, and it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
As I said, when I first looked at the numbers, it seemed counterintuitive, but this makes sense, so thank you.
I think they are, and we tried to break them back down into at the end of each of these things, you'll see a number that says cost per linear foot, and the cost per linear foot goes back to us what we see on public sector projects for roads and streets.
And I saw those numbers. That was helpful, too.
Yeah, and
Sure.
that was
It's
our
a good check or balance.
That was our checks and balances
Right.
to make sure we were within a right framework. So happy to go through that with you. I think
this
we're
is
in a
very
pretty.
helpful.
I think
Thank
we're in
you.
a pretty good place for
Great.
budgetary purposes.
Great. All right. My comments, my thoughts, I think that I have said at a number of different meetings that just like I've heard from all the other commissioners, our number one priority is safety. And I think we all recognize that Harbor Drive is not safe as it's currently configured. And so even though tonight we're talking a lot about other areas, I think a couple of the commissioners asked some questions and wanted to clarify. Certainly when we get to the entire plan, I think the Harbor Drive piece is just so not controversial that we're all looking forward to doing that and getting that done as a part of this plan. I think I've also said that I'm in favor of reducing pavement and reducing motorized vehicular traffic. I think someone here may have said earlier tonight that just because you remove pavement, it doesn't make the plan more green. I actually believe it does. I believe if we have fewer cars in the park, I believe if we have less motorized traffic, if we have less pavement, that it will make the park more accessible to bikers and walkers. And I would love to see more people engage the park that way as opposed to driving and circling and looking for parking and so on and so forth. And, in terms of the historical context, and I love history. I really appreciate the information that was shared with me from a number of different folks. But I think when this park was built and the original circulation patterns were made, our country had a love affair with the automobile, and it was when the automobile was finally coming to the masses, and everybody wanted to have one. And why on earth would you walk to a park when you could drive to a park? And now I certainly hope it's the opposite. Why would you drive to a park when you can walk or bike to a park? And so I think this does give us an opportunity to reimagine the park to some extent. And I think Commissioner Duffy had said that I could see a number of different circulation patterns, and I think I could too. As I look at these diagrams, I have to admit I'm incredibly intrigued with the idea that Upper Drive is just gone. And I find Upper Drive really divides this park and really separates the western area from the middle field. And I think it would be very exciting to see what that looks like. But I'd like to get some broader community input on that. And, that's, I think, one of the things that I'm hoping is going to come out tonight is we as a group are going to try to narrow this down to 2 or 3 different possible configurations, circulation configurations that we can then go out and get additional input from the community. But, it sounds like what I'm hearing from everyone is that Middle Drive just probably shouldn't be a space that's available to motorized traffic. And so certainly one of the concepts that I think we'd want to go back out to the community with is a configuration that has a walkway at where Middle Drive is. And then, I've heard a couple of different commissioners talk about nothing at all at Upper Drive. And I think most people have said that if we do continue to keep Upper Drive as as something that's accessible to cars, that we should probably relocate it. And I've thought a lot about this. And, for me, it just simply doesn't make any sense to rebuild this road where it is. And, when we take a look at the cost, it's basically going to cost us $1 million to rebuild this road as is, and it's going to cost us $1.3 million to relocate it slightly, so that it's no longer on MWRD property. And from my perspective, if we rebuild it exactly where it is, we don't own that road. We don't own it in the sense that we don't decide how it's used. And it would seem to me to be incredibly irresponsible from a fiscal perspective to spend $1 million on an asset that we really don't own. As I look at it and as I think about it, this gives us an opportunity to correct a mistake that was made decades ago. And for all of the people that I heard here tonight, and us as a group, I think what we all would have to admit is if there were no roads here, if we were really starting from scratch, and what the consultants have told us is there's really nothing salvageable on these roads, that we really are starting from scratch from the perspective, and I think going back to Commissioner Kozlowski's question, could we just do a little bit of work and buy us a little bit of time? What we've heard again and again and again is there's nothing worth keeping here. So even though we have some existing roadways, it really is sort of a fresh canvas in the fact that we don't have anything salvageable. There isn't a single person in this room who would say, let's build a road on somebody else's land. Now, a lot of people are saying, this is how it is. Let's continue to do what's been done in the past. And that's just not a meaningful argument to me, that if we were starting over, we certainly shouldn't build on somebody else's land. So, and that's what I've heard from most of the commissioners as well. And to some extent, I think back to the community playfields discussion. And to be honest with you, initially, I was sort of on the opposite side of that, in that we were talking about whether it made sense to invest in somebody else's property, the District 39's bathroom. And at the time, I thought that perhaps for 10% of the cost, we might be able to meet the need of the community with respect to a bathroom. And what I heard from the other commissioners, and what I heard from the public, and what I heard from the staff was that we really needed something that was our own, that we were responsible for, that we controlled, that we could decide when it was used and how it was used. And I was persuaded by that. And in the end, we decided to build a bathroom very close to where that bathroom would have been one. But it was something that we then we designed it, we controlled it, we decided how it was used, and really this is the same thing here. It would be inconceivable to me to spend $1 million of Park District resources for something that we didn't have control over. So in terms of how we move forward, I think there's a couple of different possibilities, and I'd like to get feedback from the group. It sounds like one possibility would be to ask community feedback for the current configuration with a road on Middle Drive, even though it sounds like none of us are in support of that, but then an upper drive that is relocated so that it's only on Park District property. That's one possibility. Another possibility is that we have an upper drive that, again, is only on Park District property and a walkway on Middle Drive. And it sounds like a third possibility is no upper drive at all and a walkway on Park District property. Are we interested in seeking feedback on all three of those, or perhaps just two of those?
So,
and I'm opening this up to the floor.
So
Yep. You want me to say it again?
No, okay. I understood. I'm hesitant to put it out there without the option of no change, because it sounded like what you were saying was that none of the options would allow upper drive to stay where it is.
Right. That was what I was proposing. That's correct.
And I fully understand.
And as I heard from the group,
yes,
I think the only commissioner I heard in favor of.
I support.
Sure. Okay.
What you are saying, right?
But you'd still like some additional feedback.
No. Well, I just think that that we need to have one of the choices as is. And I don't agree with that, but I think that it needs to be offered. Okay?
Okay.
And I would add that I think that we need more of a breakdown instead of presenting whatever the plan with, no middle drive, that we focus on middle drive. Do we change it to a walk, a 10 to 12 foot
middle
walk
drive,
plan?
yes,
Yeah, so
no.
we do,
So rather than an entire circulation plan, you take a look at each individual
So middle
piece.
drive, then upper drive. So I think that's
Sort of like
that's
how it was
clearer.
presented
So,
today.
Yes.
Sort of
yes,
like that.
More
Okay.
like that, yes.
And I think along with that, you could have specific questions following the initial question, which, to reiterate, I see it as keeping both drives as they are or removing middle and turning it into a pedestrian or removing it altogether. Perhaps those are the iterations. But with respect to upper, you could, just assuming it stays the same for the surveying purposes, but then as a question, you could say the cost differential is $300,000, which would move the road off of the property. You'd have to explain that a little bit, but you could present the option that for this price difference, would you support slightly altering, and you could show the difference of where the path would move at that cost, right? You could show that option. In the same way that I would like to circle back to the option about the path to the dog beach. We haven't talked about that tonight, but that's still something that I don't think we've fully gotten the public feedback on that specific topic. And so I've certainly the information that we've received, the community correspondence this month has been mixed on that topic. And so that's another area that I would like to see in the survey. So I think there's a couple of sort of enhancement questions, if you will, that could help us vet out some of the priority.
And I would definitely, also, I'm just saying, make sure the costs are included, so the cost of keeping it, cost of.
Now, so I think we've also talked about perhaps getting some feedback on some shelters. We've talked about perhaps getting some feedback on the entrance. My only concern as we go through all of this, and by the way, the way that the information was presented to us today, I think is very straightforward. But we did explore the possibility of a survey not too far in the past, and as we looked at that, the feeling was there were simply too many options, there was too much information, and it would be too confusing. And as I hear all of these things, I'm concerned we're heading back down that path again. That's my only concern.
100% headed that way
Yeah,
right now.
I agree. And to your point, Patrick, I completely agree with you that the option to not change is one that should be considered. I would like to look at that a little bit differently in that I think what the biggest argument from neighbors and from the community is upper drive staying where it is, but middle drive, it seems that the consensus when you really get down and deep is that no one wants that as a roadway. I haven't heard a single person in my communications ask for that as a roadway. So instead of keeping the first with absolutely no changes, do we keep the first option as a walkway for middle drive and keeping upper drive in MWRD land? And having that be the first and then the two other concepts that you mentioned.
And I guess my only question about that, and again, that's great that we're having this discussion, but I guess my question about that would be, we've heard some feedback where people say they'd like to see the status quo, and obviously that's not the status quo. And I agree, as you dig in a little bit deeper, I'm hearing a lot of the same things you are, but in the same way, I think it's difficult to explain the advantages of us having a roadway on our property versus the status quo as well. I just want to make sure as we look at this, are we going to overly complicate again? And I'd like to understand how we can sort of avoid the trap we were afraid we were about to fall into back earlier this fall.
I think we need no less than 3 pictures, holistic pictures to see and compare. I fully agree with what you were saying. I was leaning that way as well. Overwhelmingly, the public has said that we shouldn't count the parking spots on Middle Drive because in recent history, those are not used for parking. And I don't believe I've ever gone to GILLSON Park that I was allowed to drive down that drive. There's pylon, there's something blocked. It says, don't come this way. So I I tend to lean the way you do. Presenting the path, the option is, I think it was C in the 1C in this first presentation tonight, which showed it conceptually the same, but the path was now a 20-foot walking path instead of a, which could be driven on an emergency as was presented to us tonight.
It's 12-foot walking path.
Oh, I thought we were talking, yeah.
Which, to clarify, the path along Overlook is 10 feet. Is that right? How
wide
is
is the
it?
walkway on?
Up on the top?
Yes.
That's 10 feet.
That's
It's 10 feet. Okay, which is a great width, I feel.
The idea, though, I asked, why 12 feet?
Okay.
And it's to allow vehicular, like emergency
which we've
safety,
stated.
so
Yes.
that you could actually have a vehicle drive. 4th of July,
Right,
where's the ambulance going? Is he driving across the lawn?
yes. Yeah, understandable.
12 feet? I thought,
I guess what I would say on that score is, again, is when we get to the specific design and the bidding, we might decide it different, but I think in terms of getting some additional community feedback, I don't think it's relevant whether it's a 10-foot or 9-foot or 12-foot path.
Yeah.
Just the notion is that it's a path that could support emergency vehicular traffic, but otherwise it's designed as a walking and biking path. I think that's probably sufficient for our feedback purposes.
And I do think that our comments here really should be weighted heavily in how we do proceed from here, in that every one of us feels that that should be a path.
I agree with you.
And Commissioner Goebel, I know the mention of having it be grass is a wonderful option, but I do agree, Patrick, 4th of July, having a cut through there is a very important safety concern for us as well. So I don't think that we even consider that as not a cut through at all. I think it needs to be a path, or I don't hear any of us wanting it to be a road either, but if we need to put that on, then I understand.
I just throw it out there because there was a lot of comment about, option 1. Well, option 1 was no change.
Yeah.
And so I think that still needs to be a choice. I don't agree with that plan, but that needs to be a choice.
It's funny because I see so much nodding in the crowd, and I just want to be sure that Middle Drive is not wanted as a road. That's correct. I'm getting thumbs up from everyone. I don't think it needs to be an option.
I understand, but it's 27,000 people in this village. There are 20 people here.
Yes, I completely agree with you. I think our instincts are also very important in why we're elected.
I get it. Like I say, I don't agree with the idea, but I think it needs to be there.
Okay, fair enough.
I guess I struggle with not calling that what is today. I feel like to say no change is a road that's there that's not driven on. So I feel like that is effectively the same thing. That's where I struggle with just adding a 4th layer to the survey.
Yeah, I completely agree. I would prefer to proceed with that not being offered as a road. I see very little benefit to that.
Okay. I mean, listen, if the majority says that way, that's fine. I'm just saying. So, and I'm not going to fight it. I guess
the only
share my opinion.
The other way to maybe doing that is because what comment is just doing none of the above and seeing what the none of the above.
I love it. You know what? Let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of the park. Yeah, none of the above. We don't want.
I'm fine either way. I'm just saying that I'm comfortable with that plan because to me that is effectively the same answer.
And Patrick, I completely support and understand why you're approaching it as you are. To Commissioner Murdoch's point, if we continue to offer as many options as this plan prevents, I was confused looking through this. I had to have 2 phone calls to be like, what dotted lines? I think to bring that to a survey, I say this every time, it has to pass the stroller test for me. This doesn't pass it doesn't pass a stroller test to me. I can't look at this as I'm pushing a stroller and understand what roads are going where.
And I guess if we're not going to show an option that's exactly as is, I guess I would ask the same question about Upper Drive that I think I heard 6 of the 7 commissioners say it really doesn't make sense to spend $1 million on something that we don't control. So I guess I would ask the question, why would we ask a question when it sounds like there's a strong majority here that thinks that doesn't make sense. And that's something that can be challenging to explain in the sense that sort of the major. Hey, guys, could you guys please keep it down out there so we can have the discussion? Thank you. I appreciate it. Because I know that for me, from time to time, I'll look at something less expensive is better than something more expensive. That's always going to be my default position. So for those of us who have really looked into it and investigated it, does it really, if we're not offering as is status quo, if we're already making change, and Kara, I hear what you're saying, but technically it is still a road and it could become a road again. If we're not doing that, why are we going one direction one way and then going the other direction the other way? Just so I understand the group thought process.
And as per my comments, I fully support moving it out of MWRD land. So I want to be clear before I say that, before I make my next comment, which is I feel that topic, the MWRD upper drive, is a much more politicized hot topic than that should be addressed publicly, and really where we have a dialogue to explain to our public why we would potentially want to move it, just as we've done tonight. Why invest any more into someone else's land? I think that dialogue needs to be shared with as many people as possible so that the option for that still should be there.
Sure, I understand what you're saying.
Also, just to add to Upper Drive, while I did express concerns about investing in Upper Drive when it's not our land, I also think some of the considerations that we'll take into account when we make that decision go beyond just the cost that we were focused on tonight and the road options. And so I am a little bit reluctant to remove that as an option without the larger considerations of trees and landscaping and the overall environment of the park. So I think it could potentially, well, at the same time, we need to narrow, we need to move forward, but wanted to raise those other considerations.
Sure, that makes sense also.
I guess when I think about what I most want to solve for next, I want to answer the question of where do we want the arteries to be, right? And so some of this is, it's not correct to say it's semantics, the whole MWRD discussion. It is much larger than that. It's political, there's a cost, etc. But what I would most like to know first is, do we want a road there or not? I know a couple of you suggested that you were excited about the idea of removing all the roads within the interior of GILLSON. To me, that's not the first place that my mind was going, but I'd be interested to see how much of the village felt that way. And so one of the options I would like to know is, if both of those roadways weren't there, how does someone feel about that, right? So it comes back to the basics first before the details of if it's on the land. So I don't know if it's possible that becomes a board discussion once we decide.
After.
Right, and
Sure.
maybe there's a hearing or there's another way to gather public input on that
Sure.
specific topic once it's been vetted with the MWRD, because we can't publish a survey without having some inkling of where they're going to land, as we've talked about. But I really would like to know, of the two roads, is it one, the other, or none, right?
I like that because that simplifies. And my concern is that I don't want this to be something that's overly complicated. So what you're suggesting is that we should seek some feedback about whether something that's basically status quo with the configuration as it is now. A second possibility where the middle drive is strictly a bicycle and a walking path with no possibility of vehicular traffic other than for emergency, and a third possibility where upper drive doesn't exist at all. And with respect to the first sort of the as is, we'll revisit the question about the exact location of that road at a later date. Is that what I'm hearing you say? That really the focus is on whether there are three major roads counting Overlook, or there are two major roads and a walkway, or just the one major road being Overlook.
I actually would go so far as to say the semantics of the middle drive, again, just leave it as the walkway, as we already were saying, or the road, call it what you want. It's a non-vehicular paved surface. Or I'd be curious how the public felt about removing it. I hear you, the stroller, there's other things. There could be a scenario where the path just comes a little bit to the playground and does a loop and goes back out. I acknowledge that you could always follow Overlook Drive, which is probably, I guess I don't know if it's more scenic, it's the lakefront closest view, I suppose, but there is a sidewalk on that whole stretch, so you can still get from here to here in the same manner if the road's not there. I'm open to it if that's, I know one of the commissioners also suggested, or I think Julia, you suggested, maybe you'd rather see the lawn there. That does create more contiguous lawn space. So again, I'm open to hearing, but I've shared tonight where I think that I've landed based on what's been presented, but that's what I would most like to hear from the public is where do they want more green space if they do?
And
in
again,
which
this doesn't
configuration?
bind us on any decisions. Cecilia, were you going to say
I
something?
do want to say one thing that we've kind of not mentioned here with the survey is parking. One of the earlier concepts that we saw, included, replacing parking that, could potentially be on Middle Drive. But, none of the prices have taken that into consideration, and none of these drawings have that additional parking on it. And do we
Layer
start
additional
to,
parking back on.
yeah, but that's also a question. Do other people want these other additional parking areas? And, I think I know I've said no, I don't. But, I guess that is sort of a question though, then that to ask that of the village residents as well. Do we want to see, it's almost like, and I know this is perhaps asking, but it's even a question, do you want a parking A, B, C, D? Do you want these areas? Because perhaps most people would like to have parking, by the tennis courts. I think there was some a potential of additional parking by the tennis courts. Maybe people would like to see that there. So it's almost, but we almost have to ask each section individually to really get an accurate response.
And I think I would be very hesitant to do that because, again, going back to the whole complexity question, I think that if we wanted to survey, do people want to keep the same amount of parking? Do they want to compensate for Middle Drive parking, which I think we would now in our nomenclature talk as an increase in parking, whereas in past we had talked about that as sort of maintaining, or do people want to see a reduction in parking? I think it's fair to ask that question, but I'm not comfortable asking people to review each parking pod because I think we're going to end up right where we were back this fall. And at the end of the day, I think that it's our job to explore and investigate and understand with a lot of these issues, because quite frankly, some of these issues do get very involved. And I appreciate how many folks in the community have really invested time as well. But I'm not sure that it's our job to decide by polling either. And I'm not saying that you're saying that, but I think that what we're trying to get here is some community feedback on circulation. I think going back to Kara's point, sort of the big question. And then from there, I think we can layer in some of this. And I'm not precluding the possibility that there could be another round of some sort of community feedback. But I would point out again, we have been talking about this since 2007. So I'm hoping that we are going to move fairly quickly toward a conclusion in the first quarter of next year.
Can I just ask a question? So, or express a thought. I think if we were to just say, okay, I like the idea of narrowing it down to these 3 plans or whatever, very simplifying it, right? However, I think if we're just putting plans out again, a lot of people who come to the park or who are walking around with their stroller don't quite realize kind of the big picture or what's upper, what's middle. So if we were to say, do you want to take middle, or, in and out or upper in or out, I think we're, but what about asking some more, taking sort of this input and then whoever, staff working to develop some questions based on sort of where the board has landed that could get some input to help guide us in our next decisions? Is that something that could still help move us forward without, or just a thought, or are we kind of set on putting out sort of more plans and pictures and?
Well, I think what we've talked about is sort of, at least at this point, one additional round of sort of broader community input. And again, going back to the history, we were getting ready to do an additional survey, I think, the beginning of the fall. Okay. And as we looked at potential configurations of that survey, the feeling was that it was overly complicated. So it made sense to sort of have these smaller group meetings, get some more feedback. And then from that, what I thought I had heard the group saying was that we would try to tie down this circulation plan, and everything else would then layer on it fairly rapidly. Okay. Because again, for example, there's no controversy over what we want to do on Harbor Drive, with the exception of possibly there was some investigation of perhaps an additional walkway, maybe not in lieu of, but maybe in addition to a walkway on Harbor Drive, because we all want to improve safety. So I thought that the direction we were going was trying to narrow down the circulation, so with some additional feedback, we can sort of finalize a circulation plan and then overlay everything else over that. Is that not where people are?
No, I think, and I think that's great, and I don't want to like slow us down. It seems like it's just hard to simplify when there's so many points. So
I'm not sure we're that far away, actually, as I'm hearing what everybody is saying.
So if I can just make a suggestion as we take this next step to the public, that a picture says 1,000 words, instead of just saying, do you want to remove Upper Drive? Do you want to turn it into walkway? Picture. Mm-hmm. Do you want it to look like this? Like we have in front of us here, a picture. It's just so much easier for people to understand what is being asked of them.
Yes, I expected that.
I understand what you're saying, though, Lindsay, in that a picture is worth 1,000 words if you understand what you're looking at and how it directly impacts you. So we know these plans intimately, and we know that Upper Drive, people zip around 1,000 times looking for parking. We know that Middle Drive isn't used. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I probably could guess at that. I didn't really understand what Middle Drive was, except the decrepit road with a basketball hoop behind the playground. So I do think that I think you're completely onto something in that how we have been presenting our survey clearly is not informing our residents to vote beyond a quick response, beyond neighbors or us who truly understand what's there. And if we are trying to reach our full population, is there a way to rethink and reframe how it's presented to achieve that? Am I
So it sounds like it's a picture and maybe not 1,000 words, but a picture and a whole bunch of words.
We could have a picture not only of the map, but we could have a second set of pictures that show like the entrance to Middle, like where there's like the blockade that says you can't go here. That would clue me in 2 years back to myself, right, to your point, of what was Middle. Mm-hmm. And maybe the picture of the entrance to like the different spots to try to connect the dots a little bit better. But to go back and simplify, again, what I was saying before, the three options that I see are as is, which means Middle Drive does not have cars, but pedestrians and bikes can use it. So that's the as is scenario. The second scenario is removing the Middle Drive, which gives you more lawn. Mm-hmm. The third scenario is remove Middle and Upper, which gives you the most lawn.
I agree. That's what I'm hearing as well.
That's what I'm understanding too.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of really great enhancements that we've been kicking around for the last couple years. Picnic shelters, the beach. We can maybe, defer the previous feedback. We can go back and look at that again if we need to dig into any of those while we're going out for the survey. But the shorter it is, the better response we will get. Obviously, there's like a correlation there. But things like the shelters and where they're going to go, this is a long-term plan. This isn't a 2-year plan. This is the 10-year plan. So we still will have time to finesse where those will go and when, and have more public conversation around each of those subsequent conversations. I think we've all said many times over that the roads are the most important and will start first. So I don't know that we're building a shelter in the first year. And so I'm comfortable just, again, keeping the survey to which roads do we need to repair.
And the as is down the road, we'll look at whether we want to tweak that location of Upper Drive or not, but that's not a central question right now. I think you're absolutely right. So I've noticed, Steve, as we've been talking, he's gone 1, 2, 3, and then a big X, and then 1, 2, 3, and a big X, and then 1, 2, 3, and a big X. I think we finally have our 1, 2, 3.
There's no X.
There's no X. Is everybody on the same page?
Yes.
I think that makes sense. So do you guys have the direction you need from us to try to put something together where we can get another round of public feedback?
Why don't you just run by it one more time?
Kara did it so well, I'm going to let her do it.
So one of the options, and you can choose the order,
Right.
is as is, which we would articulate that
I don't think it is as is.
Well,
That's what she's saying. Just
I'm
right, just let
calling
her-
it,
right.
we can finesse it, I'm calling it as is with no cars on Middle Drive, but pedestrian and bike access.
But that's a smaller pathway.
Well, we can choose to
Potentially.
shorten or narrow the path when we repave it, is the way that I'm saying this. But essentially, the way that it's functioning today, it's not a functioning roadway where the cars travel through on a regular basis. So that's why, to me, as is, in the sense, it preserves the Jen Jensen-esque design of the park with the roadways in their locations
And a rolling,
and the curves and
Right.
the
Right.
curvilinear. I learned a
But-
new word from you guys from the public
Curvilinear.
comment, but it was great. Curvilinear.
but with no motorized traffic on that,
Correct.
which has been the practice in the
But
recent
I
past.
I am kind of concerned that we may say that we're as is, but the fact that it's.
We're not going to
roadways
define it
from
as
shore-
is. We're not going to
don't have
say
to
this
call it
is
that.
as is. So we're not calling it as is. We're
Okay,
saying
alright.
this is how it's basically
I'm
being
trusting that
used.
they're going to wordsmith
Right.
it. I'm just,
Okay, and show that it's a 12-foot wide pathway, yes, that people will see that, yes, okay.
showing it that it's a path without cars, but pedestrians and bikes can traverse
Mm-hmm.
that stretch all the way from Overlook to the Lakeview Center, the whole path.
Mm-hmm.
Second option is removing Middle Drive so that that's lawn, but Upper Drive remains the same. And the third option is removing Upper and Middle so that there's all of that lawn. So that's why I said, like more lawn and most lawn.
Mm-hmm.
In the first option, Upper Drive still exists.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So Upper Drive exists.
It's 3 roads, 2 roads, 1 road,
2 out of the
right?
3.
Right.
If you're
Right.
counting Overlook.
Yeah.
And I guess, Ally, thanks for sort of clarifying what I was trying to say. You said it much better. But I guess I'll ask, yes, we're simplifying, but it's for purposes of, yes, moving forward, but also getting additional feedback,
Correct.
right, from the community?
Absolutely.
So I guess we have to ask then, given this framework or simpler set of options, do you guys think that we could potentially get some valuable and feedback? Or is it going to look very similar to the feedback we've already gotten?
You know what? That's a really good point, Lindsay. Let me add that we're not asking them this is the master plan for Gilson, but we're saying we are surveying you on the circulation
Correct.
path within
You
Gilson.
have
Does
to
that
have a
semantic
specific
help?
question that you want them to respond to that can be checked in the box, or very simply, I think that was the concern was it has to be very simple and easy to do for somebody on a cell phone or any other mechanism. So the question is more important than back to the concept of visuals are everything, and I'm with you, Patrick, 110%. But the question is the most important thing. What are you asking when I look at this? When I look at this, what are you asking me to? Because they're going to look on a plan like all the ones you've seen very similar. I mean, there's just minor discrepancies. A little more green on this one, a lot more green on that one. So I think that's the most important part is how we're going to frame the question.
And is that something you think you can do based on these discussions? Yeah.
Properly.
Great.
Maybe there's an angle of how do you
It is a
use
survey.
the roadways.
So
Yes.
they're basically voting.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Okay. We good?
Yeah, that's helpful to understand that it's more targeted,
Right.
specific, and simple.
And to be clear that these are not plans, these are options.
And
I
there are
want to
no
be very-
decisions that have
There
been
are no
made.
decisions.
There have been
These
some
are
discussions, but-
options.
right,
Yes.
correct.
I do not want
Absolutely.
these to be publicized as our plans for Gilson.
We are trying to define the circulation plan on which we will layer everything else over.
And forgive me for being selfish, but I know I just kind of jumped in and very strongly boiled it down, but I genuinely want to know what
People
people
think.
care about most, because I receive a lot of emails about keep it the same, but then there's such a movement for the green, and I agree with you, making it more green feels like removing roads. And so there are a lot, I genuinely am open to hearing where people are landing on that specific issue.
Great. Okay. Do you have the direction you need from us? Thank you.
Thank you.
With this, I'd like to suggest we take a 5-minute break, and then we will continue with the agenda.
Wonderful. You're getting me breaks. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Julia, you're the marketer communications. You can wordsmith it, right? I'm just the rough.
All right, we are back and picking up where we left off, the standing committee reports, beginning with the Lakefront Committee.
Yes, thank you. The Lakefront Committee met and discussed several items. Most recently, we looked at not only the year-end report, but we also looked at several other items in preparation for the new year. We have not met in December, and we will not meet until January.
Great.
Just recapping November activity.
Okay, thank you. Golf Committee.
We met recently to consider golf club facility improvements, to hear options. We also received an update on the golf cart path. We meet again Wednesday, the 15th, where we'll get another update on the golf cart path and also hear golf club restaurant proposals.
But the good news on the golf cart path is?
Complete.
Fully paved.
Fully paved, yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. Where are we at with the vendors? What's the due date and the time?
We're meeting
Due
on
date was
Wednesday.
last Friday. We have 5 submissions, and we will be reviewing them as a staff tomorrow morning and making a recommendation to the committee on Wednesday night.
And the golf committee will review on Wednesday.
Is there a tasting banquet we're invited
There is no
to?
tasting.
And who will be the new pro?
I'm sorry?
Who will be the new pro
That's,
with Jamie's retirement?
To be hired, I think.
Cole.
Hired?
no,
Oh,
Cole's doing it.
Cole.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Great. All right, Parks and Rec Committee.
We were given an update on the landscape plan, which is in our packet, and I believe we're voting on. That was
Before
the
we
main-
vote, I think we have a resident who would like to address us.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that was really the absolute entirety of our meeting, so.
Great. Would anyone like to address us on, yes, please, Rick?
Once again, Rick Prohov, 2435 Pomona Lane, and I'm not here to complain tonight. How about that? First of all, I'm sorry to see what happened in the community play fields with some teenager or whatever destroyed the field.
For anyone who's listening, over the weekend, someone appears to have driven onto the fields and the community play fields.
Ripped up the turf.
Ripped up
all
the
over
turf.
the place. But the path is really great. You know, we had a lot of discussions about what was going to happen with the community play fields, and I'm very pleased, and I see a lot of people using it, and it does integrate all parts of the park. And the fact that this board is far more sensitive to landscaping, horticulture, green spaces, sustainability is a nice welcome change. So I applaud the board's effort to keep on that track. As far as the landscaping plan that's in the packet, it's kind of hard to tell what's involved. I realize that's just a schematic of general plans, and I would hope that there'd be some more input as the specifics come down. A lot of my neighbors are wondering about the placement of the trees and concerned about precisely what it would do to their view. And I've suggested that it's not exactly down to the foot in the print that's there, and that hopefully we'll be able to get input with the people who are actually making the placements. So, for instance, I know my neighbor Derek at the corner of the park on Pomona, he has concerns that the 2 groups of trees would be directly blocking his views from his house that he's enjoyed for years. So all I would like to ask is if there's some input where we could be involved in those kind of very specific, not overall general comments. And the other thing is I assume that the pumps are still going to be moved, and the drawing in the plan was just old information, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Steve, the word schematic was used. Is that a pretty good way to describe these plans? This is the first time that I've reviewed a landscaping plan.
Yeah, I think it's a fair way to say it, that it's not down to the foot, as Mr. Prohoff said, so we'll look at it.
Great. All right, so
I haven't dropped out of it. I've got my own.
I think you have additional.
That makes me so happy to hear about the walking path, by the way. I was on it, and it is fantastic. It's such
It's
an
really
asset
exciting.
to our
Yes.
community.
Oh,
I'm so
another
glad to
public
hear it.
comment. Yes.
Thank you. That means a lot to hear that.
You've already had one bite at the
Yeah,
apple.
I know I have.
Especially dressed like that.
I know. I don't admit I'm wrong often. I think the last time was 1972. But the path has been proven to be very popular. I've walked it multiple times. and it does access most of the park. It's pretty comfortable to walk on. I'm a little concerned about maintenance of that path because even right now it's a little bit chewed up and it's only been down for about a week. So I'm just curious as to how that's going to get maintained. And I watch Steve nodding his head up and down. But, I watch that path every morning while I'm having breakfast. And I haven't written down numbers, but a large number of people who jog around on that path jog in the grass next to the path. So I think what you're going to, because they want to jog, because if they wanted to jog on a harder surface, there's the road.
I wonder if they think
It is softer than concrete, there's no question about it, but I've seen a large number of people jog on the path, on the grass, just on the outside of the path. And now that they've laid down the straw, it's even further out than that. So it's going to be interesting to watch. You're going to get a track formed. A mud track. So just be aware that that's probably going to happen.
Well, then people will start using the path.
Well, or they'll run in boots, one of the two.
So just to see if we can catch you again at being wrong, what's your prediction for the game?
Pardon?
What's your prediction for the game?
Oh, I never make predictions for games.
Steve, have we made a formal announcement that the path is open?
The path itself, work completed last Friday.
Okay.
And they're still out there working as of today on some of the restoration work surrounding the path. So the work is still ongoing.
I will add as a community member to put that hat on. And knowing that the path was new, I was afraid to set foot on the path until you mentioned that last Friday that it was officially complete. So I had the confidence to walk on it today, but I would have otherwise walked nearby it. So I'm hopeful that
And
the
communicate
traffic.
that with-
So if it is available for walking, even if we could put temporary sign maybe at like High Crest and Junior High or somewhere that's not obtrusive, that just might indicate you are allowed to walk on the red area now, because that would also help keep people out of the straw, which is
That's
very,
great.
very soft.
Right.
Because it will be fun if we have an opening ceremony or something when it is done, or a ribbon cutting of some
We
sort.
absolutely
but,
should. Yes.
to at least notify people that they can walk on it could help.
And
Yeah, I think we definitely need to send
And the
out-
school kids
Yes.
are using it. I have observed the same.
And
Yeah.
specifically to encourage them to not walk on our newly planted grass. I think we can be as direct, and especially in a social media type of post, to say to encourage new
Stay on the
grass
path.
to not grow.
Yes.
Stay on the path. Yeah.
I think
Great.
an email saying that the path is open.
It's a soft open or whatever.
Ally would be good enough to make a motion for me,
Yes.
7.31.
I move to approve the landscape plan as recommended by the Parks and Recreation Committee.
And a second?
I second that.
Great. Any further discussion? All right, roll call.
Commissioner Duffy,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier.
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel.
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Yes.
Plans are approved.
And is that the Parks and Rec report?
That is the Parks and Rec report.
The Centennial Committee normally meets immediately preceding this meeting. We did not meet in December, although a couple of months ago, I believe it was the October meeting, I could be wrong, the committee recommended adoption of the West Park Master Plan. And as we move through this process, and I think we're going to have to go through a zoning process, one of the standards of review, and Commissioner Duffy can probably provide more information on this than I can, is that there are certain standards of review that are assumed to have been met if a government agency is seeking zoning relief and has formally adopted a plan. So that's what we're doing tonight with this. The committee had made the recommendation. The board has not considered it as a whole. So we're asking the board to consider the West Park Master Plan. And Kara, would you be good enough to make a motion, and then we can have additional discussion if necessary?
Sure. I move to approve the West Park Master Plan as recommended by the Centennial Committee.
And
I
a
second.
Great. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, a roll call?
Commissioner Duffy.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier.
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis.
I'm sorry, you went so fast past the discussion.
Oh, so
Before I vote, do we
Yes.
need to answer these options within this plan, as was presented in our notes?
I'd have to take a look again. They're
all shaking their
my
head no.
recollection was that the committee recommended adoption of a plan that showed a playground in the northwest corner. It showed a total of 10 paddle courts, 4 above the easement and 2 more that are then down. One is in the parking lot and one is to the right of the parking lot, if you will, with an extension of the paddle hut to that length. And then 8 lighted pickleball courts where the playground currently is. So there were no options to be considered, I don't believe.
The options were strictly around the location of the playground, which I believe the board discussed last month at this meeting.
At this
as
meeting,
well.
although we didn't formally adopt it.
Right.
And the committee had recommended the location at the northern end of the park.
Adoption 1. Yeah, it's
So
just
that's
that
what
the
we're
way it
voting
was
on.
written in the minute,
Sure.
in the packet.
We pulled
it
out an
doesn't
old
say
memo
what I'm
from a
voting
prior
on.
committee.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to preserve the integrity here.
We're voting on a master plan that has the playground location in the northwest corner of the park.
Commissioner Kozlowski says yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel?
Yes.
Commissioner Murray?
Yes.
Plans are approved.
And that's the Centennial Committee report, financial planning and policy.
Okay, financial planning and policy, we met just about a month ago on November 15th. And I should also add that we did also meet as a committee of the whole last Wednesday to discuss the budget, the upcoming budgetary years. Okay. Oh, it did stop. That was the problem, feedback. Cool.
Which is fine for us for now.
Yeah.
The
no,
village can
good.
figure that out later.
Yeah.
Muted that one.
Yep.
And that determined that it
Right.
was coming from there.
Beautiful.
Okay. So just to kind of go over briefly, we had some brief updates on solar panels for CRC. No real information there yet. On communications, we authorized, Director Wilson pointed out that the board has authorized the hiring of additional person to work in communications with department with Marlon. We had some updates on diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that the Park District will be having a social equity committee. It will be meeting. Actually, it may have met already, right? That the idea is to make clear expectation as what is expected. We kind of discussed the memorial tree policy, just more of it sort of in general, no decisions, but kind of got information on what the existing policy is, and kind of bandied about some of the ideas that were provided for tagging trees, but no decisions made. And the board manual has been deferred. By the updated board manual has been deferred. At this point, we will not be meeting in financial planning and policy. Will not be meeting in December, so hopefully we'll be coming. That will be presented in January, and that will come to some conclusion about that. For new business, we discussed the debt scenarios for 2022, mainly just developing on the extension of the DSAP, if I can remember what that stands for, debt service extension base. And the initially, and we determined that we probably would be going for 1.21 million on DSAP. We went over the financial statements for the month ended October 31st, 2021, and I will say, just as we have gotten closer to the end of the year, we can pretty much say that we do anticipate a 2021 surplus of $2.953.904, which I guess we can round up to just under $3 million surplus, which is wonderful news. And thank you so much to all the staff and to Director Wilson, who worked so hard to make this surplus, to achieve the surplus, which is really very helpful to everyone. We also went over the 2021 capital expenditure summary, in which I think a lot of that will not, there are some items that will not be expended in 2021, which will be going to 2022. And I think finally, we have also in the discussion of also getting, I don't know if I'm using the right terms, but that we have decided like on another like $2 million in
Operating debt.
Operating debt, yes, debt certificates for revenue generating capital projects. So, okay.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Great. Real Estate Committee report.
We don't have anything, we have not met again.
Great. Intergovernmental Cooperation Committee.
Nothing to report.
Great. That brings us to the Executive Director's report.
The beauty of going later in the meeting is most things have already been covered on my director's report, so I'll just handle the two remaining items that we have yet to address as they're under new business. We did the tax levy hearing at the outset of tonight prior to the regular board meeting. In new business, we have to actually pass an ordinance. In addition to the ordinance, we pass what's called a reduction resolution. All that is directing the county that if we overextend over levy on taxes, how we wish for them to reduce the levy. Otherwise, they follow their basic formula. We have a specific way we want them to do it. Both items are, procedural year-end processes. And lastly, we have a proposal from RENOSYS to put in a PVC liner in the main pool to address significant leaking issues that have progressed year over year. We feel that the money is well spent, as we believe we can recoup the expenditure in 2 to 3 years based on water savings. The reason why this is not a formal bid process is they are a sole provider of the product. There are no competitors, so a bid process is not warranted. And all of that has been checked with our legal counsel, so you can feel clear-headed on approving that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much.
Question, so they're the only makers of RENOSYS, but aren't there other commercial pool liner manufacturers?
No, not of this type of product. There is spackle, or what's it called? Plaster.
No, but like vinyl liners.
No.
Okay. I found
You
some
know
with a
some?
quick Google search. I'm just wondering, did we look at other manufacturers, or was that the best?
This is the best, with the most effective cost and holding off a 10-year warranty, and with all the other perk districts, we still see this was the best option.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have no unfinished business, so moving on to new business, consideration of tax levy ordinance 2021-0-4. Cecilia,
Yes.
would you?
I
Thank you.
move to approve ordinance 2021-0-4, which is an ordinance providing for the levy and assessment of taxes for the Wilmette Park District, Cook County, Illinois, for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2022, and ending December 31st, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, could I have a roll call?
Commissioner Duffy.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier.
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel.
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Yes.
Ordinance is passed.
And
I move we approve Resolution 2021-R-6, a resolution directing the manner of any reduction of the aggregate extension of the 2021 tax levy of the Wilmette Park District, Cook County, Illinois, in order to comply with the property tax extension limitation law.
second?
Second.
And again, any further discussion? Steve had talked about the purpose of this as well. Great, then a roll call.
Commissioner Duffy.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier.
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel.
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Yes.
Resolution is approved.
And Commissioner Goebel, could I put you to a little bit more work?
Oh, it's hard work here. I move to adjourn to closed session.
What about the?
Well, we got to
the
approve
proposal?
the RENOSYS.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Yes.
RENOSYS
did.
first.
I jumped ahead. I apologize.
Got excited.
I'll tell you what, I'll make that motion.
Yeah.
All right, go for it. You're stealing it from Lindsay, though.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, you show up a little. Yeah, Lindsay, fire away.
I move to approve the proposal from RENOSYS in the amount of $114,495 for pool repairs at Centennial Complex.
I'll
And a
second
second. All right. Any further discussion beyond the discussion earlier? Any additional questions? All right. The roll call.
Commissioner Duffy?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier?
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Goble?
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Yes.
Proposal is approved.
I move to adjourn to closed session for the purposes of the discussion of appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel of the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the district or against legal counsel, to determine its validity and to discuss the minutes of meetings lawfully closed, whether for the purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes in accordance with Section 2C1 and 2C21 of the Open Meetings Act.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, roll call.
Commissioner Duffy?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier?
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Goble?
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Yes. And could I have someone move that we adjourn? Oh, no, we've got to come back later. I'm sorry.
Just went to
I'm
closed session.
I'm just a little bit